So I believe it's 6:19. The board is going to reconvene, leaving executive session. We were informed when the meeting started that it was properly warned by Mr. Nally. So to begin, I think we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Yes, I move that we approve the minutes of, of the Tuesday, April 5th meeting.
Excellent. So we have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 5th Select Board meeting. All those in favor, please indicate with an eye.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much, Jess. All right. So now we have chair remarks, and that's me. Hi, everyone. My name is Ian Goodnow. There's a lot of people here that I probably haven't met, but I'm sure maybe you've emailed me. I'm going to keep my remarks tonight just to process. We have a lot of people here in the room, which I don't know if people on Zoom can see, and we've got a lot of people on Zoom, which I don't know if people in the room can see. So when we get to questions that the board is considering that's going to have a lot of public comment, the plan tonight is we will go back and forth. So we'll have people raising their hands on Zoom and people in the room who wish to speak. We'll go from a person on Zoom to a person in the room, and we'll move back and forth like that. And we will ensure that every person who wishes to speak tonight will have that opportunity. And that is all I have to say on that. Town manager remarks?
I have no remarks tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Board remarks? Liz?
Just a reminder for everyone that the Park and Rec Department has the need for a lot of lifeguards, and that's summer employment. Please contact the Rec and Park Department.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we move to public participation. So this is only to speak on things that are not on the select board agenda. So if you would like to speak on something on the agenda, then we'll wait until we get to that item when the board recognizes the public. So is there anyone in the public here or on Zoom who wishes to speak to something that isn't on the agenda tonight? And for people in the room, if when you do come to speak, you'll want to stand at the microphone there so that the people who are watching on TV will be able to hear your voice. So Patrick, I'm just checking to see.
No, sir.
No hands up. And it doesn't seem to be anyone in the room either. Okay. Yep. Okay, so then Yoshi, can you please speak for a moment on the consent agenda?
We have 3 items on the consent agenda. Number 1 is the High Street Leveling Project. Number 2 is Oregon Street Pipe Project. And number 3 is the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Excellent. So the board members have reviewed the items that were on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Sure.
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Daniel has moved to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes 5-0. I see Jess with her hand up. Favorite motion, I think.
I move that we convene as liquor commissioners.
Jess has moved that we convene as liquor commissioners. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. So, agenda item A on the liquor commissioners is the River Garden third-class liquor license. Is Hillary going to be speaking to this?
No, Patrick will.
Patrick will be. Excellent. Patrick, please.
Good evening, everybody. So tonight, the board is asked to issue a third-class liquor license to the River Garden Marketplace located at 157 Main Street. As the board will recall, River Garden Marketplace already has a first-class license, an outside consumption permit, and an annual entertainment permit. With this application, they are seeking a third-class liquor permit, which allows them to serve hard alcohol and not just beer and wine. The application has been reviewed and considered by all the town departments and is awaiting your approval. They are good with back taxes. They have all their other permits and paid all their other fees. And I do believe that a Mr. David Heiler might be around.
Ah, yes.
Yep.
Can't see.
Packed house.
Yeah. Mr. Heiler, would you like to speak to the application at all?
Sure. Happy to.
Oh, yeah. We never
Hi, I'm David Heiler from Whetstone Brands, and I wouldn't call it an oversight, but we didn't apply for it originally. We really wanted to get the craft beer bar going and get the whole thing set up at the River Garden last year when we started this. And it's come to our attention, a lot of our clientele is interested in having a small cocktail menu. Not all of them like beer or wine or cider. And we felt this was a good time to apply for that and just put in a smaller bar area there. It won't change the look of it, it won't change the hours, it won't change the context of what we're doing at all. It will just allow us to create some craft cocktails for some of our clientele. And I'm open to any questions anybody has about it.
Questions from the board?
Some question.
Well, it came all the way here.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of relevant, but how is the River Garden doing?
It's doing really well. Thank you for asking. I feel like we created a different niche. I think when we first started this, there was a question that we'd be competing with ourselves, and we really wanted to create something that was different than Whetstone Station. And while we do have a third-class license down there, we have craft cocktails there. I think the market here is slightly different, and we want to continue with the different style that we're doing, a little more sophisticated, and I think it brings in a different clientele than a brewery does. So yes, it's doing well, and I think we're starting to build a good local crowd, and we feel real good about it. How do you guys like it so far?
I'm a big fan.
Fishing, I genuinely feel feedback on that.
And it's great to hear that a downtown business is doing well.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that. So.
Last time I was there, some of my colleagues were there.
Yes.
I was gonna say, I love your open mic nights and music that you present.
Me too.
Thank
you.
Yeah, I think it adds a nice element to downtown. We're still kind of recovering from pandemic, and the balance. We had out of town visitors this past weekend, and they just love just hitting the little shops along the side, and it was very family friendly too. You can sit at a high top with the kids, and everybody feels pretty comfortable. So
Excellent.
appreciate you making that space.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Heller. And does the public have any wish to speak on the liquor license matter? Checking Zoom.
Nothing here.
All right. Any other further board discussion? All right. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve a third-class liquor license for the River Garden at 157 Main Street.
Jess has moved to approve a third-class liquor license to the River Garden at 157 Main Street. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
I move that we adjourn as liquor commissioners.
Jess has moved that we adjourn as liquor commissioners. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we move on to new business. Agenda item A is the monthly financial report.
I'm bringing up Kim Frost, our new finance director, to answer any questions you might have on the report.
Wow. If you want to. We were just talking, we don't use the table enough.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure.
Welcome to Brattleboro
Thank you.
Municipal Government.
Thank you. So it's my first meeting today. So my name is Kim Frost. I'm here like 10 days, so I hope you like my report. It should be okay. But I come from New York, and we decided to move up here full time, and really excited to be part of the community and be part of the team here and work for the community. So thank you. Okay, so the financial report, I think it was included to everybody in the email, right? So as of this year, we're 9 months into the budget with 75% of the fiscal year complete in the general fund. We are at 73.9% of that budget. If you take out some expenses and you prorate them, we are at 71.3% of the annual budget. So we're on track, which is good. In the other two funds, the utility fund and the parking funds, They're also both tracking the same 74.7% in the utility fund and 73% in the parking fund. As of March 31st, 2022, the grant report contains information on 24 active grants with 5 new grants. And that's my finance report, if anybody has any questions.
We'll start with the board. Any questions on the financial report?
Well, I've got a question. 10 days in, you must know everything. No, and this is
Got it all.
Yeah, and there's no problem with that. It just caught my eye, and it's probably my own, not doing my due diligence, but since these folks depend on me to always ask a question about the finances. The rental income on the police income line, it's actually on page 216. Can someone, if it's not our new member, remind me what's going on with our rental income? Because we do have it rented. Right.
Yeah.
But was there a bump in that income because they weren't in time to sort of make up the budgeted 18,000?
You directing that question at?
I think I'm directing it more at Patrick.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Thank you. Well, you'll recall there is some rental space at the 62 Black Mountain Road, the home of the police department. It is currently being leased to, Windham County Safe Space, Safe Place. And I do believe that the rental income for that amounts to about $22,000 a year. But there was a period of there where it was vacant and we hadn't actually been receiving full rent from the reformer when they were there. We gave them a bit of a COVID discount. So I think I can track that more closely, but I do believe the rent that we're going to be receiving from Windham County Safe Space is going to amount to about $22,500.
Yeah, it's not a large amount, obviously. I just wanted to see if there was something going on there that I wasn't aware of with the tenants.
Yep, we've signed them to a lease. I believe it's a 5-year lease. So,
Thank you.
Jess?
I have a question. It's on page 16 of 16. In that first general fund chunk of numbers. So it's in the transfers section. And I'm just not familiar with what this fund is. It's the last one on the list. It says transfer to fund 07. It's the James Bond fund. I was just looking for a little bit of clarity on what that was.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Honest, I'm going to defer to Patrick.
Sure. So the 07 fund was a fund that let's see, you go back a little ways. Actually, Tropical Storm Irene. We established the 07 fund, and what we did was we put all emergency expenses into that fund. When COVID hit, we thought, okay, here's another emergency. Let's, reuse the 07 fund and let's start placing COVID-related specific expenses into the 07 fund. As the pandemic evolved, it became pretty clear, at least within the first year, that the pandemic was a different type of an emergency, right? It wasn't an emergency that had a very clear beginning and then a very clear end. In fact, it became the sort of long emergency that just went on and on and on. And so what you see there is a little bit of a reconciliation between the 07 fund and the 01 fund, which is the general fund. They are, in fact, one and the same. It's just that we set some funds aside, and this is sort of the final piece of bringing them back together. Because COVID-related expenses are now the cost of doing business. And there's no point in tracking them quite so separately.
Thank you.
Sure.
Satisfy your question?
Sure does.
Excellent. Any others from the board? I'll just look to the public.
I did have one other question or something that came up for me as I was looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
The amount of delinquent taxes, delinquent utilities, and the number of utility shut-off notices.
Do you want to direct us to your page number?
Stood out to me, oh my god. It doesn't have a number. It's the finance monthly statistics.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So just thinking about, we said we would start issuing shut-off notices again last November, and the child tax credit payments to families ended this winter. I'm just wondering if that is a significant number. If it's not, I just wanted to put it on the board's radar as part of this financial report, because it seems like there's a high number of utility shut-off notices.
Daniel.
I guess if anybody from the treasurer's office was available to speak to that would be great. And if not, that's fine. But so in my day job, I help people avoid shutoffs. And there are, he has an in-joke about it. But shutoffs are not fine. And we want people to avoid them. And the treasurer's office and I have had conversations at times about helping Brattleboro ratepayers connect with programs put in place by the state to help with delinquent balances. And as part of those conversations, what surfaces is that during the natural course of events, there are always a certain number of shut-off notices issued, and typically issuing a shut-off notice for most people will result in a payment and avoiding of the shut-off. So I don't imagine anybody from the treasurer's office is available to speak to it right now, but maybe we can get that information by email. And I would encourage anyone in the community who is in receipt of a shut-off notice to contact SEPCA, where I work, 802-722-4575, right around the corner on Grove Street, or to contact the treasurer's office, and they can help, connect people with those programs so they can avoid shut-off.
What we can do is for the next financial report, we can have a sort of a mini report just on that issue. And so we can sort of go into a little bit more detail. So.
Thank you.
Liz.
I noticed that when I got my water bill yesterday, there was a notice about people who, if they're having trouble paying their bill, where to seek help. And that was something that came out of our discussions in the Board of
Civil Authority.
Because sometimes people find out that there's help way late in the process. So this is an effort to get people to know where help can be found sooner rather than later.
Great. If there isn't any, unless anyone else wanted to speak on that, okay. So if there isn't any further questions, it's come up on the board a couple times now. When we put the financial report on the agenda, we have to vote on it. So if I can get a motion. Yes, Liz.
I move to accept the monthly financial report as presented.
Liz has moved to accept the monthly financial report as accepted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. New business agenda item B, the financial management questionnaire and internal controls.
Correct. So you'll see there's two questionnaires. One is from the state that municipalities are required to file. And then one is from our town auditor, which is a little bit more detailed, which they like to have as, looking at our control process. We went through it. We changed two things that were there from last year. And it's there for your approval or any questions.
Yes.
What were the two things?
I'm so glad you asked. That I could tell you. So one of the questions was, are salary and wage rates approved by the Selectboard? Previously, that had said no. After discussion, and we realized through union contracts that the Selectboard does see the salary, we changed that to a yes. And then the second one was, does the town have an approved vendor list? And that was yes, previously, and we changed that to no, that there wasn't like an approved formal list of vendors. So those were your two changes.
Great.
Any other questions on the board?
Well, I just wanted to mention that this is a very good program to safeguard the town finances by having a review of these questions, and I appreciate the process, and I think it's helpful for all municipalities to conduct this.
Definitely, I agree.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Frost. I think in that case, I'll look for a motion. Oh, unless I'll just check.
Questions? Go.
I'll make a motion.
Liz?
To authorize the chair to sign the financial management questionnaire, towns and cities. Number 2, the municipal checklist for internal controls, part 1, cash controls. And 3, municipal checklist for internal control, part 2, other controls, as required by the state of Vermont and the town's auditors.
Liz has made a motion to authorize the chair to sign the financial management questionnaire, towns and cities, the municipal checklist for internal control, part 1, cash controls, and municipal checklist for internal control, part 2, other controls, as required by the state of Vermont and the town's auditors. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. So, move on to agenda item C, which is, thank you very much. Which is a possible reconsideration of the permanent placement of the Harris Hill ski jump sculpture. So, I think actually this one's mine. So, an interesting procedural situation, and anyone who knows me knows that I really kind of love procedure and weird procedure. So, as long as I've been on the board, we haven't had a reconsideration before. It's a request made by Mr. Wessel for a reconsideration, which went to the agenda setting committee, which comprises of the vice chair, Daniel, and myself, the chair. And the reason being that there were documents that, while contained within our select board notebooks that we get every meeting, were not kind of in the part of the notebook that we're usually used to finding them. And so after a discussion with the other board members individually, it was determined that basically no one had seen them. And so with that in mind, that there hadn't been a full consideration of all of the backup material that the town provided us, it made sense to bring this to the board's attention through a motion for a reconsideration. So what does that actually look like procedurally? Basically, we can have discussion on the reconsideration, which is essentially the information that I just spoke about, why we're having a reconsideration, and then we can take a vote on that. The motion for the reconsideration needs to be made by someone who was not on the losing side of the previous vote.
That would be me.
Okay, so Liz, would you like to make a motion?
Yes. I would like to make a motion to reconsider the permanent placement of the ski jump sculpture.
Okay, so the motion's been made. If the motion carries, then there will be we will essentially be reviewing the same agenda item that was placed on the previous select board's agenda concerning the sculpture. If the motion does not carry, then ceases discussion and we move forward with the agenda. So, is there any further discussion from the board on the motion for reconsideration?
Do you want to speak to it?
Would you
You're
mind?
the one that requested it. Yeah.
Yes,
that's
I did request this. I spoke to the town attorney, Bob, before requesting it because it's very unusual. Our board rules don't speak to a reconsideration. We follow Robert's rules for small boards, and I checked that, and that doesn't really speak to it either. So then I leaned on our town attorney to ask if this was something that had ever been done. And he thought maybe about 10 years ago, I think he said. But the reason was I was actually shocked at the fact that there wasn't much public feedback. And then the next day when I realized, somebody pointed out that there was letters that I was completely unaware of. I assumed the other board members were not too. And I thought that was a little unfair to the letter writers. So that's really the reason. It's also this strange confluence of events that happened. I don't know if you remember, the online version of the Reformer did lead the reader to believe that it was a likely approval. And so I think that kind of led a lot of people to not show up and voice their concerns. We didn't even have anybody come to raise their hand on Zoom. So I thought that was a little unusual. But really the reason was the two letters, the reason why I requested. And if there's no hard feelings, if it doesn't pass for reconsideration, and there's no hard feelings if it doesn't pass once we do approve the reconsideration.
Dave?
I just want to make sure I understand the procedure. So
For sure.
if a majority of the board wants to reconsider this, will it be reconsidered right now?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. I confirmed with Attorney Fisher to make sure that I was doing this correctly because it's kind of an odd procedural dance. But unless there was a reason why we couldn't consider it right after this, for some reason, we need to consider it immediately after this vote if it carries. And I looked to Bob to make sure that I'm getting it right.
You are correct.
All right.
Jess.
I didn't see those letters in the materials provided to us this week. So I just wanted to make that statement and make that clear that a reconsideration, to me, that has to happen tonight, will be very difficult without the missing materials that were the impetus for the reconsideration.
They actually aren't missing because they're in our electronic linked agenda meeting that we still have in our inboxes. So I assumed that everybody could read them then.
Tim, would you like to characterize the letter?
Ooh.
Is that possible?
I don't know. I think
I'm not sure that should even influence the vote for reconsideration itself, possibly the next vote.
It's just that they
No, you're
exist.
right, yeah.
They exist.
Yeah. I don't know. Does town staff want to speak to that? Also,
Can I just say one more thing?
yeah.
I want to make clear that it was an oversight really from the board's perspective,
Correct.
not our town manager's, because our town manager put it in our notebooks, just in a place that we had not previously discussed they should go based on past tradition. But it was just because we haven't worked this out yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, it's
Yeah.
entirely on the board because
Yeah, it's
it
on
was
us.
in correspondence, which is a very reasonable place to put them. It's just not sort of the method that we have gotten used to. So
we used to use it for miscellaneous correspondence versus relevant correspondence.
Right. And so I guess the point being made by Jess is that the backup material for this item doesn't include those letters. And I guess the counter argument is that, well, actually it was included in the original, it's just simply the placement of the originals which created the confusion. And that's so I guess I sort of leave it at that. I think that unless you want to speak more to it. Okay. I guess I'm going to look to the public to see if there's any discussion on the reconsideration vote from Zoom. And I look to the public who is just tired of listening to us talk about this, I think. So in that case, there's a motion on the table. Without any further discussion, all those in favor of reconsideration, please indicate with an aye.
Aye.
I didn't see actually. Did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay. All those opposed, please indicate with an
Nay.
Thank you. So the motion carries 4-1. So now we move directly into the motion, the agenda item that was previously on the agenda last meeting, which Tim, would you like to speak to that for a minute?
Yep. The Harris Hill Ski Jump Harris Hill Association requested that the town allow them to, while agreeing to continue to maintain in good condition the ski jumper, let's just refer to it as, because sculpture is sort of an odd term for the thing it is, but it's certainly a piece of art featuring a ski jumping figure. They requested that they leave it up year-round because it's durable, not obstructing traffic. And that way, there wouldn't have to be the work of putting it up and down, reinstalling, however it was deemed, seasonally or in preparation for the coming winter and the next Parasail ski jump. Does that sound about accurate?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would ask that the extraneous elements outside of the sculpture be removed while leaving the sculpture intact year-round and it be lit seasonally.
Yeah, I think that was sort of where we were headed at that previous meeting, so maybe we shouldn't relitigate that.
So, yeah, so,
But we are relitigating.
No,
My
yeah,
input on
that
that
portion.
was, I thought that it should be lit year-round and
Mhm.
be its full artistic expression of what it was intended to be year-round if it's gonna stay there.
okay. Further discussion, Daniel?
I mean, I guess it's just kind of worth bringing up what the original agreement was and what I understood to be the original intent of the sculpture. It was to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Parasail ski jump, which occurred this winter. Everyone had a good time. It was commemorated. The agreement was to have it in place until March 1st, I believe. It is now April 2019.
19th.
What's the date today?
19th.
19th. The board had a public meeting about this. Other matters, the board voted in favor of not accepting not agreeing to leave it there outside of its, previously agreed upon time, but instead saying we will allow you to leave it there, well, to place it there seasonally between December 1, March 1, and an amendment was tacked onto that we would not only allow that, we would also help with installing and deinstalling. It's a pretty sizable piece of work, so, that's not nothing. That vote happened, 4 board members were in favor of that, 1 was opposed, and now here we are.
Good summation of the, I know we have representatives from the sculpture that may want to speak. I'm not sure. No? Okay.
I'm not a sculpture, but I'd like to talk. I'd like to.
You're absolutely welcome. Yes, please. I'm just going to check in to see if anyone else had discussion now. No. If you want to come on up to the mic. And then, and this will just help if you can just speak clearly so that people can hear you on Zoom. And then also, and you can keep your mask on, whatever you like. And then if you can just state your name and where you live right now, and then please.
Great. So my name is Maggie Lewis, and I live in West Brattleboro. And I sent you all an email, it was like last week, after the article hit the Reformer, that the proposal to have the ski jumper up year-round was denied. And I was hoping in this process, which I'm so pleased that you're looking at this again, that you take the new proposal separate from what the original agreement was. Like, I respect your perspective of this is what we agreed to. And you follow through on it, and I think that's great. But a new proposal has come forward. And so kind of leaving that last one behind and looking at the new proposal and taking into consideration how, this is just, again, my perspective, that we offer a ski jump that's Olympic size here in New England that nobody else does. We have an opportunity to encourage young children to lean towards more athletic and outgoing things outside. Hey, what's that? Why is that there? How can I get involved in that? It's a way to create more exposure to outdoor activity for our children. It's a way to put us on the map, literally on the worldwide map. People from all over the world know about our ski jump because people come here to compete. People come here, every year from all around the world, and I think we should have it up year round because it's something we should be proud of. No one else has it. We do. I mean, there's a potential to have more commerce around it because it's there to bring attention to the town. The other thing is the whole concept of putting it up, taking it down, putting it up, taking it down, and having town funds go towards that when it could just stand there without using town resources every year to put it up and take it down, just makes sense to me. Having it lit year round, that would be great. I like the concept of doing the lighting annually during that original time frame to celebrate the event in the season in which it is held. I don't understand why we wouldn't do it. So that's just my perspective. So thank you for your time.
Ms. Lewis, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else? Yes, absolutely. Come on up.
Hi, Dora Bubalis, Brattleboro. So I want to understand how this started because in my reading about when this was put up, it seemed like they just came to the board, put it up, and it sort of bypassed what might be policies of how to do public art in town. And there's a very, very clear policy, which if it's applied fairly, would mean that this is taken down until they go through the process of doing that. But I'm not sure, maybe that didn't happen. There's a question as to whether it's art or whether it's a sign, because it's a metal sculpture of their logo, which, and so then are we saying to every nonprofit, you can have a year-round sign the same size on town property downtown? Because that's problematic. And then you get into value judgments about because every time something like this comes up, everybody's like, oh, it's such a great organization, it's so worthy. All nonprofits in town are worthy, and they should all be treated equally. So I'm just concerned that there is a policy in place for how to do public art, and this is bypassing that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bubalis. Mr. Keller, come on up.
While I would agree with that's David Heiler again. While I would agree with Dora's assessment on it being a symbol of the ski jump and as a nonprofit, I think I'd like to speak to the aesthetic of it, which is that it's attractive. It's made locally. It's powered solarly. It kind of lives up to what Brattleboro is. And if we go by our slogan, there's only the one and only Brattleboro. That ski jump is unique to us. It's one of the things that really makes us stand out. And I think as people drive into town, it's one of the things that people will see right when they come in. The lighting, I think, is great. Again, it's solar power. It's created by a local artist. And I think, while it does represent a nonprofit, it's more about it representing the ski jump, a 100-year history that we have in this town that is very unique to us. And I think it really does stand out and it looks great. So that's all I'm going to say about it.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm just going to check to see if there's anybody on Zoom first. Nobody on Zoom. Tim. Okay,
I take that back.
all right, sorry.
Sorry.
Wait.
There is one on Zoom. It's Jody Normando.
Ms. Normando, if you want to join us.
Yes, good evening. This is Jody Normando from Dummerston. I have spent my entire life, which is a long time, in this area and grew up in the Brattleboro schools and have been to the ski jump for I don't know how many years when the famous people, the Tokels, et cetera, were jumping. I think this is very much a symbol of Brattleboro, and as well as a symbol of the ski jump. I do believe that the town of Brattleboro uses this symbol maybe on their town trucks, et cetera. It's nothing new to have this symbol around. It is a piece of art. I really enjoyed seeing it up there this year at the particular place that it is at. And it does, as others have said, It does bring a lot of commerce to the area. These jumpers people come up here and spend the weekend, and they, spend their money on other things. We do need that, particularly after the COVID. So I'm asking the board to please reconsider their vote and allow it to stay there and be managed by the ski jump committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Normando. Anybody else on Zoom? Nope. All right, Tim.
Thank you. I was just looking up in case we needed the original motion. I just want to point out that, excuse me, we received a collection of 386 signatures in favor of keeping it there year-round today, and another collection of signatures which I did not have the time to cross-check, so I don't think there's duplicates, of well over 100 signatures as well from another party. And I do want to remind the board that this was vetted and recommended by our staff. And we never mentioned that last time, that always bugged me, so I just want to say that it was staff's position, it was a good idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had one kind of clarifying question to follow from Ms. Bubalis's point. And I guess I am long exhausted newbie questions, but I don't. We've done some other public art things with on the select board since I've been on. I think one comes to mind is the mural in the Harmony lot, or not Harmony lot, in the Harris lot. Thank you. And it was just which one was it? It was a higher road. I was trying to remember. So yeah, and I don't really recall us doing any other procedure on that one either. So yes,
that does have something to do with the the non-functioning of the Arts Committee, which we are addressing also at this meeting.
Yes. Okay. All right. Daniel.
So is your question, what was the town's policy about public art?
I guess, or I don't.
Can anyone speak to that?
It's very clear policy.
That's what I thought.
So I've read the policy, but honestly, it's been quite a while. I do recall that there was a role for the Arts Committee to make a determination as to whether or not the art was seen as fitting for public display in Brattleboro. That's the best recollection I have. But I think, as Tim pointed out, there's been a great deal of trouble in the last year or so convening a meeting of the Arts Committee. And I do believe that's going to be remedied by adding some additional members to the committee later on.
Great. Yes.
I would submit that the missing correspondence from the director of the museum could serve as a proxy for determining whether the statue is art.
Daniel?
I would submit to counter that, that art is a phenomenally subjective definition. We've heard this sculpture characterized as marketing, as branding, as art, as a statue. The issues that we wrestled with last time when we already voted on this were around, does it represent an event that actually I think the majority of the board thinks is a worthwhile event and a good thing for Brattleboro? Or is it a question about aesthetics? Is it a question about what belongs in our public spaces and who gets to decide on that? Is it a question about accessibility to our public spaces? And that does speak to kind of policy and process. Who should be allowed to raise money and then say, here's this thing, we want you to put it here temporarily, and now we'd like you to keep it here permanently. I think that this whole conversation has gotten rather convoluted. We already voted on it. We heard much about it. The only things that we didn't hear were 2 letters, one of which from the director of the Brattleboro Museum and Arts Center. My wife will kill me, but my wife happens to also be the, oh my God, what is her title these days? She's like the artistic director of the museum. who is quite well qualified to define art. She has shared her private opinion with me, and it shall remain private. You know, people have different opinions about an object. And I don't really see why we're back with this issue, other than the fact that like 300 people said they like it. I could counter that, you know, I've got a number of people who commented on it where it's like half of them say that they like it and want to see it permanently, about half of them would like to see it seasonally. This board was split.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what most people say.
I'm gonna hold that for a moment, and I'm gonna stop and say there's a little bit of division on lighting full-time, not lighting full-time, and I'm wondering if we can make any moves on that from one way or the other to maybe get us towards a motion. Because at the moment,
I'm ready with the motion.
You are ready with the motion?
Well, I mean, I'd love you to work that part out so that I can put it in motion.
Is that in the motion?
While you're figuring
No,
that
the
out, Ms. Lewis, if you want to speak
Yes.
again, please come on up.
Maggie Lewis, West Brattleboro. I'm wondering, when you talk about art, is it a sculpture? Is it, you know, what is it? So what makes something a historical monument? So if we've had this event here for 100 years, again, it's the only one in New England, it puts us on the map internationally, it's been here for 100 years, why shouldn't we have a historical monument that someone's already generously made for us, has already worked with the town to get it standing? I don't understand why I just don't understand the no in having it up year round. So I'm putting historical monument out there.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I'm going to entertain Tim.
Okay. The original article warning did not contain a suggestion.
Exactly.
Okay. So I'm just on the fly here.
Yep.
I'm going with the recommendation from staff and just modifying it into a motion.
Correct.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to develop and execute a maintenance agreement with the Harris Hill Association for a year-round installation of the existing ski jumper sculpture with only seasonal illumination.
Okay. That's the motion. I'm not going to repeat it. So further discussion.
And we can continue the discussion even though it's not a tradition.
Actually, and it's a funny, I'm not going to get really long into this, but really we should make the motion at the very beginning and then have all the discussion afterward. But
Not Robert's Rules small.
we can talk about that after. Okay, so any further discussion on it? Look to this side. I look to the public. Public. This side. All right. Well, it looks like all those in favor of town staff developing a maintenance contract program with the Harris Hill Ski Jump organization for the year-round installation of the jumper structure to be lit seasonally. Did you want to put the months in there?
Yes, please.
December to March.
December to March,
Yes.
as the original agreement.
Original agreement was December 1 to March 31st, and this would be for the.
Okay, so December 1 to March 31st. All those in favor, please indicate with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Me.
The
Flip-flop again.
so the vote carries 4-1. Thank you very much. Thank you for the public comment. All right. Yes. It's just gonna take me a minute.
Yes.
I don't think it needs to be much more than a page.
Just looking at the agenda.
All right, so we move on to new business agenda item D, which is the board's consideration of the Golden Cross EMS contract. I'm going to begin this discussion There seems to be some confusion regarding what the select board's role in this discussion is. So I'm going to start by reading from the Brattleboro Town Charter, which can be conveniently found on our website. Specifically, I'm going to be referencing Article 4, Section 6, subsection C, and that is that the Brattleboro Select Board has a duty and a responsibility to establish and maintain a rescue service, including quarters, vehicles, and equipment, and to provide for an ambulance service and the appointed emergency medical technicians. It is that duty and that responsibility that brings us here tonight. In 2019, the Brattleboro Select Board signed a contract with Rescue Inc. for 3 years. That contract will expire on June 30th of this year. On February 9th of this year, Town Manager Manali began negotiations with Rescue to determine whether Brattleboro would renegotiate and enter into that contract again. In that negotiation, Mr. Manali requested financial documentation to support Rescue's $285,000 yearly town assessment. Rescue denied that request and did not provide any kind of financial documentation. Mr. Manali communicated that to the Brattleboro Select Board, who worked to determine what the next step would be for us to continue any kind of future contract with Rescue, given that clear lack of transparency. Then, on March 25th, the town of Brattleboro received a letter from Rescue. This letter stated that Rescue will not be willing to contract with Brattleboro after June 30th. Further, the letter made serious allegations against the Brattleboro Fire Department. These allegations had been previously and thoroughly investigated and found to be without merit. That investigation was something that Rescue was aware of, had been invited to join, but had declined to do so. Finally, the author of the letter, Chief Hazelton, stated, and I'm going to read directly from the letter, I continue to oppose BFD's application for an increase for their EMS license to the paramedic level, end quote. Chief Hazelton is the Vermont EMS District 3 Board Chair, 13 Board Chair. And for the Board Chair to present an official opinion regarding BFD's application for an EMS license in a contract negotiation with the town is a clear conflict of interest. When this was brought to the attention of the town attorney, Bob Fisher, he informed the board that this was seriously concerning. The letter left open an option for the town to return to the table with Rescue and to do so by May 1st. The select board, each individually, needed to make a decision whether that was possible or whether negotiations needed to conclude. It is my opinion, individually as one board member on this board, that given the letter's ultimatum, its unfounded allegations against the fire department, the specific conflict of interest statement that I previously quoted, and the continued lack of transparency on the town assessment and how Rescue got there, meant that I, as one board member, felt it was time to look for a different EMS provider for the town of Brattleboro. That brings us to what is actually before the board tonight, and that is the Golden Cross ambulance contract. The board reviewed how the town actually provides EMS service when it needed to continue to follow through on its duty and responsibility to provide EMS and ambulance services to the town come July 1st. And what becomes clear very quickly is that there's a duplication of service occurring. Taxpayers in town pay twice for the same service. First, they paid for the Brattleboro Fire Department. They pay for the buildings. They pay for the personnel. They pay for their training. They pay for the equipment, and they pay for their trucks. Then they paid a town assessment of $285,000 to Rescue, which we still don't understand how they get. It is our responsibility as elected officials to find ways to provide town services more effectively and more efficiently. And that's where Golden Cross comes in. Golden Cross is going to provide us a hybrid model at $75,000. This model is going to utilize the resources that the town already has through the Brattleboro Fire Department, while supplementing us with the ambulances that we need, a paramedic, and additional supplies that are necessary for us to do the job. This entire system doesn't work without the Brattleboro Fire Department, and I have full faith in them being able to accomplish this. But during this review, we also are considering EMS ambulance services being a municipal process entirely. That is not something that is before the board tonight. There is much more work to be done to determine whether fire EMS will be viable for our town. The Golden Cross contract will provide our firefighters with the necessary transport training that they currently lack if we end up going that route, which is really important. Further, Golden Cross is a very open partner with us, understanding that this is an approach that we want to take, potentially. And so they're going to work with us as we try to learn whether this is viable for our town. Golden Cross has used this model before, and effectively. They used a hybrid model, and I believe it's Littleton, New Hampshire, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, which was a community that wanted to determine whether they could have an EMS fire system in their municipality. So they contracted with Golden, they got a hybrid model, they used it for a couple of years, they figured out that we could do it, and now they have an effective EMS fire service there. Golden Cross, and this is a big one, Golden Cross has agreed to provide us with monthly data on how the real costs look for a town to provide EMS services in Brattleboro. That way, we can incorporate that in our discussion and consideration for EMS services here in the municipality, showing a transparency and a partnership that is so sorely lacking in our negotiations with rescue. So that brings us back to the board's responsibility tonight. Under Article 4, Section 6, Subsection C, to provide the town with EMS ambulance services. I stress to the board, this is a responsibility that cannot be delegated. It cannot be delegated to a townwide vote. It cannot be delegated to the town manager. This responsibility solely falls on us. And I believe that this contract is the right decision for the town of Brattleboro. So, how is this conversation going to continue? First, we're going to hear a presentation from Town Manager Manali. Then the fire department, specifically Chief Howard, are going to come up and they're going to give a little presentation as well. Finally, we're going to hear from the folks from Golden Cross, who will discuss what it's going to look like for us to be partnering with them. Then we'll bring it back to the select board, who will have their own comments and their own questions. And then finally, we're going to open it back up to the public. And we'll have any kind of comment or question that everyone has, and every single person who would like to speak tonight will have that opportunity. And with that, I pass it over to Town Manager.
Thank you. The Select Board is asked to consider authorizing the Town Manager to execute a one-year contract with Golden Cross Ambulance Services of Claremont, New Hampshire for $75,000, which will be paid in monthly installments of $6,250. Golden Cross will bill and collect the revenue for the one-year contract. They will provide 2 ambulances and 1 advanced life support paramedic provider for 24 hours and 1 advanced life support or basic life support provider from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. stationed in the Brattleboro Central Fire Station. And as a bit of background, the Rescue Inc. contract expires on June 30th, 2022. On March 22nd, 2022, Drew Hazelton of Rescue Inc. informed the town that Rescue Inc. would no longer provide EMS to the town of Brattleboro. The town at no time informed Rescue Inc. that they would not renew the contract. Town had budget for and passed by town meeting fiscal year 23, $285,600 for EMS, with the assumption that we would spend up to that amount for services the next fiscal year. With the withdrawal of services by Rescue Inc., the town contacted Golden Cross Ambulance Services to ensure that there was no disruption in EMS for the residents of Brattleboro. In addition, after careful deliberation of various options, the town is considering shifting from a private EMS provider model to a joint fire EMS service, offering patient care from the scene to the hospital with transport service. This municipal fire EMS model is the most efficient and effective standard practice for the rapid delivery of medical care. It is currently being utilized in a highly successful manner by a number of municipalities in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Though we are disappointed that we no longer are working with Rescue Inc., the Brattleboro Fire Department and town administration are excited for this new chapter in providing high-quality patient transport and EMS care for our residents. This one-year transition to a possible fire EMA-based EMS service will allow BFD staff an apprenticeship-style learning environment. This year will also allow for BFD to possibly purchase the necessary equipment and ambulances and hire the additional staff to support this service efficiently and effectively to the people of Brattleboro. Our town, our people, our responsibility. Now I'm going to turn it over to our fire chief and assistant chief to provide a presentation on the current services and the relationship and how the transition is going to work.
Yeah, you come up too if you want. Yeah.
Do you want me to
Share that, yeah. I know a few of you folks heard the presentation last evening, and I'm kind of going to condense it down a little bit so you don't have to hear the whole thing again. Again, I'm the fire chief, Glenn Howard, and to my right here is Assistant Chief Keir, and to my left is Dale Gerard, the owner and operator of Golden Cross Ambulance. We'll start out, this is my staff, and most of them are here tonight to support this venture that we're going on, and you can go on to the next slide. Staff will be dual trained staff. What that means is they can handle multiple ranges of fire emergencies, EMS, hazardous materials, technical rescue, and whatever else we get thrown at us as we answer the call for whatever is requested of us. Professional level of care. Again, as I stated last night, I thank Rescue for their 56 years of dedicated service to the town of Brattleboro. And I look forward to still working with them as a mutual aid service to the town of Brattleboro. And I strongly feel that we will provide the same level of service or better as we move forward. One of the big things that this model is going to help with is a positive is continued care from the scene to the hospital. Currently, we arrive in majority of the time the fire department arrives, depending on whether it's on the south end of town or the far north end of town. Rescue can arrive first with getting on the interstate, and their quarters is right on the south end of town. With that, majority of the time we arrive for start patient care, begin a treatment plan, and then they come in and then we have to turn over patient care. Well, where mistakes can happen is when you turn over patient care. The least amount of times that you turn over patient care is the better it is for the patient. One, it confuses the patient very much so because the fire department comes in, asks a question, starts figuring out what's wrong with this person, come up with a plan, and then we turn the care over to currently Rescue, and they pretty much start the whole plan over, and it just confuses the patient. Moving forward, there's going to be one patient contact. We begin the treatment, and we take them to the hospital. The next time it's turned over to the ER. And again, fire-based EMS model is the most efficient and effective standard practice for the delivery of medical care, nationwide, statewide, all around. This slides in here. This says it's making a financial plan for the people of Brattleboro, platform for Brattleboro. Again, as I've stated multiple times, revenue, the fire department does not care about the revenue. The fire department's number one concern is level of service and how you're treated. And that's our goal. What happens with the revenue after that is up to these folks. It's not up, that's not what we're worried about. And lastly, as you can see on all our trucks, it's our town, our people, our responsibility. And that's a motto that we live by. Currently, we have 18 emergency medical technicians, 6 advanced emergency medical technicians, 2 paramedics. Currently, we have 7 folks enrolled in an advanced EMT class, and they will complete that class in July. And as we move forward this summer, our plan is to send 3 more folks to paramedic, to start a paramedic program, which will bring our staff up to 5 paramedics. And when we do hire the 3 additional people, our hope is to at least get 1 more paramedic out of that hire. As the chair stated earlier, it's an apprenticeship program between BFD and Golden Cross that allows our members to become trained in the transport part of it, protocols and procedures. It allows us to purchase the equipment as we move forward to see the equipment that we need. And it allows our current and future paramedics to work with experienced providers. How we plan to fund the 3 new positions is to apply through a FEMA, through a SAFER grant, where if awarded that grant, they pay the cost of that employee's salary for 4 years before the town has to start absorbing that cost. This slide here is the Golden Cross, and it's a 1-year transitional period. The hope is it for 1 year. If it takes 18 months, Dale's in an agreement to work with us until we feel comfortable taking over and providing the service solely by the fire department. They've been in service since 1962. I'll give Dale a little chance to talk about his service a little bit and the history of your service if you would like.
Thank you. Our service, as it says, we've been in business since 1962. It's been in the family since 1978. Actually, my wife and I own the service since 1999. We've been a paramedic level service in both New Hampshire and Vermont for nearly 30 years at this time. We currently have offices in Claremont and Westminster, Vermont, and along with doing a lot of special event type of coverages. We, as the chair stated, that we have worked this model before. As much as 3 months is really a short period of time to try to put this together. The last time it was almost on a 15 to 20 day period, which in New Hampshire, the licensing is a little different than it is in Vermont, which made it a little bit easier, but they were under the gun at that point as well. And it worked very well together because the fire department was going on all the calls up there as well. And again, it worked out well for the residents. And I think it was in August of 2019, if I remember correctly, that they took over and doing a great job up there as well at this point. So again, we definitely would look forward to trying to work with Brattleboro Fire Department and the citizens of Brattleboro and hopefully providing great quality service for you.
This chart here shows our call volume, and the orange shows the fire, strictly structure fires. The blue shows currently the 1,367 EMS calls that we went on last year. And then the gray is all the other calls that we go on, from car fires, brush fires, chimney fires, flooded basements, lockouts, so on. What I'm showing here is how we come up with that second provider from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. is our heavy time of call volume. So that's why we've opted to have that second position. This chart shows structure fires for 2021, and it shows 11 different fires that we had, and it shows the time frames that it falls in. And I know there's been a lot of questions about, well, what are you going to do about if you have a structure fire? As you can see, it's a low number, and it's a low number that I'm proud of, because that means we're doing our job with fire prevention and fire education. When we're not going to fires, that's a good thing. And I think we show that our education, prevention, and inspections program is paying off for itself. BFD's responsibilities, again, we have 2 stations geographically located, allowing for us to arrive to emergencies quickly. This model will allow for 2 ambulances to respond to emergencies, as well as us utilizing 2 fire trucks to respond as first response as we do now. So we're able to put 4 crews on 4 different calls. And as I stated before, it's one consistent, once you make patient contact, it's one person, one crew dealing with it from on the scene to the hospital, and the only patient transfer of care is at the hospital. This is just an example of the towns in Vermont and right around us that are doing this same exact model, fire-based EMS. This is not something the select board or the fire, me as the fire chief is inventing. Its success is right there. Over the last week or so, I've received many calls from these agencies advising they're 100% behind us to support us, and we're very pleased to see us moving forward with this program. And lastly, that's just all our numbers from 2021. I'm not sure if you can read them all that far away, but I just want to close out by saying, as I did last night, I, as the fire chief, am 100% confident that you're going to receive the level of service that you've received the last 56 years, and and I strongly feel it will be better. I realize change is hard for folks, but we're making a change here that I think is going to be beneficial for everybody here in Brattleboro and the Brattleboro citizens. And you're more than welcome to come and meet with me at my office, call me, email me. I'm happy to sit down and talk to you about it. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So, board members. This is the awkward moment where everyone doesn't want to speak first.
First?
Yeah.
I don't have a prepared statement of why I think, what I think, but what I've heard in the last week from people who've called me, emailed me, are real questions that come from a very real place. I know that folks are concerned about, will I be safe? Other people have concerns about, will the town's finances be able to support such an endeavor towards a latter plan of moving potentially to a municipal fire EMS situation. The question before us tonight is about contracting with a different provider for ambulance services, but that's sort of I don't know, somebody referred to it as inside baseball, right? We are dealing with the contract, but what people here are in this meeting for and online for is their concerns about will I be okay, right? And what I've experienced with the fire department, I'm one of those flooded basement calls on your list. What I've experienced from the fire department through knowing them in this capacity and in the community is the utmost level of seriousness, utmost dedication to our people. And I have the utmost trust that Chief Howard, Assistant Chief Kidd, and all the staff would not be even considering moving towards a different provider, and even considering further down the road moving towards a municipal fire EMS model, did they not think that it would provide the highest level of care for people of the town? So I just want to state how much trust I have in that department. And then I just want to kind of raise some of the questions that people have raised to me, because I think it's important to get them out there and hear honest answers. So, one question that folks have had is this contract is going to place 2 ambulances in Brattleboro in the fire station. And people who go past the rescue headquarters by exit 1 will see that there are far more ambulances than that. So why are 2 ambulances going to be sufficient?
So can we pause you and
yes, absolutely.
have that question directed to whoever kind of wants to take on?
Yep.
Please.
As you know, Brattleboro is 32 square miles. We serve 12,000 people. We feel 2 ambulances is sufficient. Someday will we need to add more? Maybe. But for now, it's sufficient. Right currently now, Rescue has 9 ambulances. They cover 500 square miles. I feel that 2 ambulances for our response area is adequate. As I stated last night, the city of Burlington, till just recently, have always covered the city with 2 ambulances. They just recently added a 3rd ambulance. So I'm comfortable at this time with the 2 ambulances.
I guess, the other things that folks mentioned to me, some people are concerned that the budget that was put together for this and financial projections about revenue and expenses are inaccurate or, we do not have enough faith in them to really want to march towards that. And again, I think it's worth reminding ourselves that the question before us tonight is contracting for a provider for ambulance services and EMS care. But, there are other towns that have transitioned from a private, provider to municipal-based fire EMS services. And we've heard from many of them, but I'd like to kind of at least hear a little bit more about what that transition has looked like, whether those towns are able to afford it, what kind of impacts on the budget.
Yeah, I could talk to that a little bit. So, we have talked to some other towns. We've spoken to both ones that have contracts out with others, as with contracts have gone to a fire EMS model. And what we found overwhelmingly is the cost, at least for what we found for contracting, was significantly less for the contract if you were having a third party. But the second part, if you were in a fire EMS, there was revenue that almost actually every single town, not most, all of them now receives that go back to their general funds, or they've invested back into their fire departments, either through equipment, more personnel. We've heard everything from, they paid off Greenfield paid off both their ambulances within 2 years, which were both, they bought new ones and they paid it off in 2 years with the revenue that they were able to obtain from being a fire. So we did a lot of that sort of asking around and saying, is this a viable model? So we do know that is a viable model, right? Because that's what other towns did. We would, like, again, as the chief said, we're not the first.
And so, and that leads me to the point that if the board it is in favor of a contract with Golden Cross for 1 year, there's also an option for, I believe, an extension to that in the same terms if necessary. But during that 1 year, there will be a study undertaken by a third party to determine whether, in fact, it is feasible for us to move to a fire EMS model, both from a level of care point of view and from a fiscal point of view. So during that time, all of that work would happen in public sessions like this. Our contract work is something that's undertaken in executive session to protect both parties, because I think, as we've seen with some of the ugliness around this, people don't really want to negotiate their contracts in public. So during that year, we'll have an opportunity for the fire department and Golden Cross to work together and provide an excellent level of care. And we'll also get to vet whether or not this is going to work for us. And I really hope that it will be proven that it will work for us. But I think that everyone who's on this board has the guts that if the study says, no, this won't work, we're able to swallow our pride and then seek the best contract that we can for the people of Brattleboro. So, that's where I'm at with it. I'm, in favor of signing this contract with Golden Cross. I think the terms are good. I trust all the people involved, and that's where I'm at.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Other board members wish to make comments or have questions? Yeah, Jess.
Sure. So, as someone whose family has been in this town for several generations, we've had relationships both with the fire department and with rescue, getting out of tough situations, emergency medical situations. I feel that there is this deep emotional element that's at play in consideration of this contract, because it's not just a service provider who's going to plow the roads or take the trash out. It is who takes care of you, and keeps you safe on the way to the hospital, on the way to the senior care facilities, on the way to Dartmouth. It's it's a deep emotional and loaded situation, which sometimes makes it difficult to see clearly and to sort facts out separate from those emotional issues. I think, Ian, you did a really lovely job laying out the case for trying something new. And I think we need to remember that new is not a bad word. Though we did just vote to celebrate and honor our history, our town's 100-year commitment to ski jumping. We value our history. We value where we've come from. We also appreciate what is new and potentially what is a better direction for our town. And I think with Yoshi on board, he brought a new perspective to the financial relationship with rescue. And I think that that's really important, that from his experience in other communities and his experience addressing EMS and fire structures within other municipalities, he took a look at the relationship in a different way and had some really excellent questions. Golden Cross is also new to us. And my question actually is for you, because we don't know very much about your organization, would you please just take the time to let us know a little bit about your, some positive statistics about your health outcomes and your transport systems, and help us build confidence in this contract?
I guess it's going to be a tough try to answer that question. Yes, it's a case where we've been doing, like I said, we've been doing ALS, BLS, 911 community services, I believe, for 15 different communities ourselves. We have 17 vehicles. Again, I know you folks the question came up about, are you feeling comfortable with 2 ambulances? The city of Claremont, we have a population greater than what the town of Brattleboro is, and our contract up there is for 2 ambulances for providing up there. And yes, there are times that we put more than 2 ambulances on the road. I'm not going to deny that, but that's the same as what happens in any community. You can never plan for the worst case on every day at this point. I guess I'll talk about today. We actually had a cardiac arrest saved in the city of Claremont this morning that we ended up with off to Dartmouth. We hope for the best outcome. We have some very good providers. I have providers that have been with me for well over 20 years. So it's a case where you folks are very fortunate in the respect. You have some very good providers on the Brattleboro Fire Department. I believe if I was to go over and interview each one of them, they probably all have worked on ambulances in different locations and worked with rescue squads as well. So I think you guys are very, very fortunate in that respect, that we're going to be able to work together with them, with their experience as well, and knowing the community. That's one of our drawbacks, is just not knowing your community at this point. So it's more of a case from a patient care standpoint. I will tell you, I've gone into different contracts, and I will be the first to admit to you that I have to go and improve myself. I've had people tell me that we pretty much can't do what was being done, to only come back later on and say, you did a great job. So that's all I can offer you for that type of information. And I apologize not having great statistics for you. But again, I do feel very confident with the crews that we do have working for us.
And we're happy to provide them with other people's time. If there's something specific, reach out and make it. Guys, they're going to be on that truck. This is the family. This is part of town. Thank you. So also speaking of new, actually, Kim, I wanted to put you in the hot seat just for a quick second, because one of the questions that's come up also is about how we handle the financial transactions and billing and all of that work that's going to be added to the town's plate if we transition in this direction. And I just wanted to check in with you and see if you had any experience in this before, or if you had worked with a town that had dabbled in EMS service or billing, or if you have any insight on that for us.
Well, I get to sort of step in there. So if, again, this is all potential, because again, we're not discussing the fire EMS transition particularly yet. But if we did anticipate what it would cost to have a third party, because it is complicated to do the Medicaid, Medicare. It is a very complex process. So that's something that we wouldn't handle in-house and we would contract out. We got an estimate just so we can understand what that cost would be, and that's about 4.5% of the total bills. So we anticipate it'll be about $40,000 to $50,000. And it'll be a third party, so we wouldn't handle in-house.
Excellent. That's great. That answers that question. And then I think my last question, Lenny, is for you and maybe also Yoshi. Maybe you as well. As we take a look at this feasibility of the fire EMS system, I'm curious, if it doesn't work out, is Golden Cross going to be interested in continuing a relationship that's not an apprenticeship model?
Well, that's something for to consider then, right? After we have that, I think it's important for us to reevaluate, right? To look at whatever report that comes to us, to look at what what it tells us is what's happening. We'll have billable numbers at that point to be able to look at it, to now analyze. And if it does say, like hypothetically, if it does say, okay, this doesn't make sense for Brattleboro, it doesn't financially make sense, the model doesn't work, it just doesn't work here, right? Then we would go out to a bid, right? We would ask providers, including rescue, to provide, it will lay out, just as you normally would in any RFP, saying, here's what services that we're requiring, that we're going to require, if this is working, we would like our fire EMS to be included as part of that relationship. And I imagine, again, that's something that we would work on then if that would be the case. But then we would rescue absolutely would have the opportunity to be part of that discussion.
Thank you. I think I'm done riffing on my new thing.
Great. Thank you, Jess. Liz.
Okay. I thank everybody for their patience in this presentation. To my mind, what we need to consider is two things: public safety and municipal financial efficiency. And I'm entirely comfortable with, and I trust the Brattleboro Fire Department and Chief Howard in this endeavor to protect the public safety. After all, they are first on the scene for the majority of calls, and the care that they provide is first rate. I'm sure the public is probably not aware of which personnel is which in a particular incident, because they need an ambulance, and they need care. And I also appreciate Town Manager Manali's identification of this issue and his outside pair of eyes as financially efficient and prudent action, and I'm 100% in agreement. And I feel that my vote as a Brattleboro Selectboard member must be based on what's best for Brattleboro, and what's best for Brattleboro is to contract with Golden Cross. And I want to thank Chief Howard and Town Manager Manali. I consider this action to be ripping off the Band-Aid, making a decision that needed to be made, and having the courage to make it, as well as the Select Board, for the good of our community.
Liz.
Thanks, everybody. My voice holds out. Fighting a cold that started 2 weeks ago. I have like 2.5 pages, but I've been crossing out a bunch because people have been saying a lot of what I wanted to say. So just a few minutes, if you don't mind. I want to be honest with everybody and say some of my fellow board members know this. Up until a few days ago, I was a no tonight. And that's because I absolutely hate the way this has gone down in our community. You just watched this board struggle with a rare reconsideration because I felt voices were not heard that deserved to be heard. And so I think anybody who's watched me on 5 years on this board know that I believe in the democratic process. And the people of Brattleboro, unless they're close enough to the town, involved with the board, involved with rescue, involved with fire, they don't really know of some stuff that has been bubbling up in our community for many, many years. Long before I arrived on the scene. So there wasn't much advance warning that this was going to come down. And that really bothered me. And for a while, that was enough for me to say, no, we've got to figure out another way. And I also want to let you in on some of the struggles that we went through, because this was, I mean, this was one of the most emotional processes that I've been through in my time on the board. And after the February meeting, and even through most of March, we were quite busy with elections, quite busy prepping for town meeting on March 19th. We knew this negotiation was something that we would have to deal with quite quickly after the new board came online with new leadership. But you know what? The board was not leaning towards the option of going with a different transport provider for a while. I think I was leaning towards the option of hoping Rescue would go with a one-year contract, even knowing that there might be some resistance to it. Even if they, it was my position, even if they would not provide the cost details, we had been very clear about looking for. While we investigated the merits and the possibility of a town-based EMS system, using the study money we'd already set aside for purpose such as that, that's where I was, because I knew it would give us time to make the case in our community. And I have a great respect for the services and workers at Rescue Inc. And I think that's where this board might have landed. That's just my opinion. And we would have proceeded to instruct Yoshi to pursue a one-year contract with Rescue, even if there was some resistance on their end. Then the letter came. 3 days after Ian and Daniel had voted in to be our new leadership, this letter drops, and we were stunned. Now let's set aside the fact that the letter states Rescue can no longer provide service, and then implies that we can enter into negotiations sort of in the same paragraph. And let's set aside that the two opposite parties have two very different takes on what actually happened in that meeting on February 9th. But let me be absolutely clear that it was the rest of the letter, other things that were contained in that letter, that convinced me that there was no way to repair that relationship in time to sign a contract. Also included in that letter, bizarrely, since there was no way to begin or continue a negotiation, are accusations of gender discrimination, verbal abuse, poor patient turnover, lack of cooperation from Brett Fire, all of which were investigated and found to be without evidence. The worst part of the letter for me is that in writing, Mr. Hazelton said that he would, quote, continue to oppose BFD's application for an increase of their EMS license to the paramedic level. So what Brattleboro wants and needs is a transport service who's willing to be a partner in our aspirations to bring fire-based EMS to our town, something we have every right to do. So with the receipt of this incendiary letter, we proceeded very rapidly into discussions with Golden Cross, and the rest of the story is clear. At that point, I feel our hands were rather tied. We could not continue in a marriage, so to speak, with Rescue, given the irreconcilable differences this letter represented. And we were now also robbed of the time it would take to properly build community support for this action, which really infuriated me, which gave me so much trouble in the past week. The situation really sucks because I have great respect for the talented individuals who save lives every day at Rescue Inc. But the alternative to continue with a provider whose leadership hurls allegations and unethical letter, in my opinion, that's not a marriage worth saving. So I won't vote in favor of continuing with an unsuitable partner and paving our roads any more than I would vote for this one. Despite the needed swiftness of this action, despite the quite fair assessment that this is happening too quickly, this is what I feel is right for Brattleboro, for our safety, for our pocketbooks. We must take these lemons and make lemonade, as my mother was so fond of saying, and cautiously move towards a fire EMS system where the same women and men we already trust at Pratt Fire are the same people who transport us to BMH when needed. And that system becomes accountable directly to us, the taxpayers. No begging to see the books. We will see them every town meeting once this system is in place. Replacing this private service model with an accountable public service model is the right way to go. Carefully, of course. I'll just end by saying my concern first and foremost is for Brattleboro residents and visitors to get the best emergency care that is possible. Secondarily, it's my responsibility as a select board member to watch over the taxpayer money and how it's spent. So I ask people to continue to have faith in Brattleboro Fire, as you have for so many years, and continue to have faith in your select board and support this move from your board.
Thank you very much, Tim. So it is 5 of 8, and the board's sort of tradition is to take a break at 8 o'clock for our interpreters, but we don't actually have interpreters tonight. So I think I just want to let the board know this. So we have closed captioning, and that's how we're how we're doing it tonight. So if you're watching on Zoom, just make sure that if you need the closed captioning that you can click that option in the lower command bar. And so with that in mind, I plan to continue discussion till 8:30, and then we'll take a break simply for our own, everybody's opportunity to stretch their legs. If there isn't any further questions or discussions at this time for the board, and I just take a quick look, I'm gonna open it up to public comment. So if people can indicate whether they'd like to speak on Zoom by raising their digital hand, and if people would like to speak in the public meeting tonight, if you want to basically queue up behind the microphone, then we can go back and forth between the two as I discussed previously. So,
You wish to start with Zoom?
no one's at the microphone here, so let's start with Zoom here.
All right, this would be Gary Stroud.
Hello again.
Gary.
Hi. Well, I'll make it short and brief. I guess it's the thing about Brattleboro, we're family. And that's the thing that makes us who we are. We're all in this together. And in any family, there's always that feeling and emotion when another family member leaves and another one's coming in to live with you. So that being said, you know, I guess the question I'm asking, if, and nothing's guaranteed, is if the new service is going to deliver the same family care to the people of Brattleboro, because Brattleboro is unique and they have a lot of special people in this town that need that quality care that's here. And I feel as the District 2 chair, people come up and ask me, and I see that a lot, especially in the summer times. We have a higher rate of needs for people, as we've seen last year, for quality care. And I guess the question is, will the new service deliver that same, if not better, quality care to the people of Brattleboro and interact and get to know them and to serve them above and beyond the capacity that they're coming in with? Anyone can answer that.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start with the answer and then I'll pass it over to the chief. First, my answer is yes. And then second, the majority of the individuals who are going to be providing this care are the Brattleboro Fire Department, who are already responding to 50% of the calls first and are that front face already, who know this community, who care about this community. You're going to provide this service to the community. And I'll pass that over to the chief.
As you know, they're going to be working under and putting their vehicles at the fire station and working with our firefighters. And it's my job to I hold my people to a very high standard. They know that. Golden Cross is going to be working with us. Our name's going to be on it. So I can guarantee you that that high standard of care and professionalism will continue. If there's an issue, it'll be addressed. But I can assure you that's what's going to happen.
Thank you. I have faith in you and your abilities to proceed and ever forward to getting this town it's quality care that it needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, Kate, please come on up.
Hi, everybody. Kate O'Connor from Brattleboro. The select board knows exactly how I feel about this. I've been upset about it. I've been upset with you. I've been upset with the town manager. But before I begin my remarks, I just want to say what I'm about to say has nothing to do with the Brattleboro Fire Department. I said this last night. I think they're top-notch individuals. If we do a complete study of what's happening in the town and it ends up being Brattleboro Fire Department, I think that's great. I did say to the assistant chief and chief as I was sitting here this afternoon or this evening before the meeting started, that if it does come down to them doing it, I think it is wrong to give them a used ambulance. And I think that they deserve better than that. So I need to put that on the record because I think our fire department and our residents deserve better than used equipment. I'm going to be saying things that you have heard before, but no one else has heard before. And I appreciated that you read from the charter. You know, I was on the select board for 6 years and there can be things written on paper, but I never forgot that you need to have open and honest dialogue with the people that you represent. It's not just a document. Jessica talked about the personal nature of rescue, and I actually had that conversation with her, and I told her that there were some really personal relationships that my family had with rescue. That's not the reason to keep the service, but it's a reason to respect the service. It's also a reason why you need to respect why people would get so upset that this was happening. And I think that was has been lost in translation, and frankly, I think it's still lost tonight. You folks talked about how we got to where we were from rescue's perspective. I'm not here to talk about rescue. I'm here to talk about with the town, from what happened on the town level, you folks in the select board. And I think that I want to hold you accountable to that. As you talked about, there was a meeting on February 9th between rescue and the town. You also talked about the next thing that happened was the March 25th letter. And Ian, I appreciate your being honest about the letter that says that there was an offer to negotiate. And I'm sorry that the town manager left that out during his presentation. The town issued a press release on April 11th, and we're here today on April 19th. Between February 9th and March 25th, there was absolutely no communication between the town and rescue. No communication between the town and rescue. I think that's a failing of leadership on the town's part, both the town manager and the select board. Who knows what would have happened if you folks had had another conversation. The March 25th letter may never have appeared. I'm just hoping as we move forward that we can get back to where we need to be and everybody step up. I think there needs to be stepping up from all sides. I actually wish that tonight you would vote not to vote tonight and to take a step back and call rescue tomorrow morning and say, hey, do you want to see if we can work out a one-year deal? I know you couldn't do it with the same cast of characters that were in the room. You have to have a mediator, which is pretty sad. And I think it's, I'm upset because I was on the select board for 6 years and this breakdown, I've never seen it before. And I know you're not going to do it. You're not going to listen to anything I said. We've had multiple conversations, but I feel the need to get up and say that, you know, it's disappointing as a longtime resident of this town that it has come to this. And I need to lay my upsetness, if that's such a word, at the 6 people that are in front of me right now, because we elect you to do the job. And I don't think you did the job that needed to happen to make this work. And it's really, really unfortunate. So I hope, you know, moving forward, there can be more transparency, that there can be public discussion, there can be honesty. And I really would urge anybody who's talking about that March 25th letter, please don't leave out the part that they offered to negotiate. And I actually think, I'm kind of hoping that we're going to get over all the he said, or they said stuff. Because frankly, I'm sick of hearing it from you folks. I'm sick of hearing it from rescue. I think we're all a better community and I hope we can move forward. I'm really upset and you folks know how I feel, but there's more to the story and I just hope that you folks will step up and do right by the town in the future. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you for your years of service to the town of Brattleboro. Oh, yeah, I was just pausing for that. Yeah, we'll take the opportunity to speak to anyone who's, please, Liz.
I just wanted to mention that last September, when I was chair of the select board, Peter Elwell brought me to the annual rescue meeting so that I could see the leadership of rescue in action. And it wasn't pretty. There's hostility towards the Brattleboro Fire Department merely because they're a paid career fire department. And, rescue does a lovely job and they're fine people, but their leadership and their business model is best served in towns that do not have paid fire departments. And that's been the conflict. And Peter wanted me to see that. It wanted me to convey that to the rest of the select board members because he knew that this issue was coming to a head. And I've talked to select board members who've said that this issue has been brewing for many, many years because of the inherent conflict between the rescue model of business and a paid career fire department. And that's the problem. I think rescue have an opportunity to work with us, knowing that we have a paid fire department that performs rescue, and they chose to be difficult instead. And that's why we're where we are. And I think that they put us in a pickle, and you may not want to hear it, but it's been brewing. It's not sudden, but it's sad. Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to comment? Okay, so we'll look to
Bob
I was
Ozer?
hoping I'd be able. Is it Bob?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Ozer.
Where'd he go? There it is.
And there I am. So yeah, I mean, I have to be cautious in remarks because I don't want to rehash a lot of stuff. The September 16th meeting, by the way, I will start there, I guess, that Ms. McLaughlin had just referred to, is on tape. And you can see that meeting. And at about an hour and a second into it, there's a question from another town as to how Brattleboro's initiative to train firefighters as paramedics would impact on the system that's in place. And Chief Hazelton is there at the meeting, and he says, well, I'm not going to entertain that question, but Brattleboro is here, and maybe Brattleboro wants to speak to it. And Peter Elwell gets up, introduces himself, introduces Liz McLaughlin, and then says, we do want to train firefighters as paramedics, but if we do that, we don't want them sitting on their credentials. We want them to use their credentials. But we also don't want to harm the system because the system is working. And I was taken to task for quoting that at one point. But I think the context of that quote is from a meeting where the rates were set, or the rates were being revealed anyway, at that September 16th meeting, and also in the context of Brattleboro training firefighters as paramedics. So it seems like there was some common ground there. It seems like maybe I was not at the meeting, so I don't know if there were other things that were going on that were not as common, but that was the context that you can see from the video record. I think Kate O'Connor did a wonderful job of outlining the chronology. And it's still a bit disturbing that between February 9th and March 25th, there's a big lacune. What happened during that period? Why didn't anything happen during that period? There was, I'm going to make you nervous because I'm going to say the word Facebook, but there was a comment the other day on Facebook about someone moving into town. And I said, well, have you heard about 6 degrees of separation? And I said, around here, it's about 3.5. And then someone replied to me and said, no, it's 2. And I said, well, I was being conservative. And there's a problem there too, because 15 communities is served by rescue. And those 14 of those communities are located geographically right next to us. And there's maybe no responsibility in the charter and no responsibility in the law for us to recognize that. But there is in the degrees of separation from those communities. So somehow, and this is a hope, and maybe it's emotional in a way, but it's a hope, that that relationship can be repaired in some way. And I think Chief Hazelton is on the Zoom call. And I don't know that there's a way that we can talk about this here, but maybe, and I don't know that the board would even approve this, but to take a vote to, I don't know what the proper term would be at this point, to abstain from voting today and make an adjourned date, and in the interim, try to figure it out. I had other prepared notes, but I don't think I really need to go there, because maybe a lot of that stuff could really happen in that meeting, which may or may not happen. So I'll leave it right there. And
Okay.
thank you for everything that you're doing.
Bob, thank you very much for the comment. I think Daniel wanted to respond first.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate your thoughtful comments always and questions. I was actually really grateful for the context in which Peter Elwell's quote that I've seen in the news, that the system is working. It was helpful to hear that, because it was a question about paramedic status amongst Brattleboro Fire, and Chief Hazelton, who is the, maybe I'll get this wrong, but he's on the ambulance board for District 13, which certifies whether somebody can get paramedic status. He chose not to speak to that, which seems strange to me. And I wonder if Brattleboro Fire would like to speak to our current situation with paramedics. I believe we have one person right now who is licensed as a paramedic who is not able to practice as a paramedic.
That's correct. We have one right now. He's been licensed almost 2 years as a paramedic. On his days off from the fire department, he works in Ludlow, in Ludlow, Vermont ambulance service, municipal service, and he's able to work as a medic at that level.
So the Brattleboro taxpayers pay this person's salary, and because of some reason, this person is not able to actually practice at the level that they're certified for in Brattleboro, where we're responsible for doing equal right and justice to all. And all of our law is about providing for the health and well-being of people of this town. And yet, for some reason, the paramedic who is capable of doing that job is prevented from doing so in Brattleboro.
And the other thing I want to say is that gentleman paid for his paramedic school himself.
Okay. So when Bob said that there was some common ground there, that seems to me to be exactly not the case.
Thank you, Daniel, for that. Anyone else want to respond to Bob?
Well, I just don't see why we would want to negotiate with rescue at this point. What would that serve? I mean, to my mind, we have ambulance provider A and ambulance provider B, and we are going with ambulance provider B, and that's it.
And I feel that the contract that we have before us is a more effective use of what Brattleboro has. That's our job, is to negotiate contracts that are the best for the town.
I'll just make a quick sort of personal comment, because one thing Bob mentioned was effect on Windham County. And actually, oddly enough, earlier today, we were in an interview where somebody mentioned that Brattleboro is so integral to the success of Windham County that when Brattleboro does well financially and socially, all of Windham County does well. So that is very top of my mind. It's no secret that I'm running for state senate in Windham County. And it certainly crossed my mind that some other people not in Brattleboro might be displeased with my position on this issue. But the point is, my elected position right here, right now, is to do what's right for Brattleboro. And that's why I favor this contract.
Thank you very much.
It can be very personal, and we do care about Windham County, but certainly not our responsibility if rescue is structured in such a way that depends on Brattleboro's transport to DMH. I certainly think they should be able to survive. I hope they do.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So that was a Zoom, so now we got a room. I may have been practicing that.
Well, a couple of things, because now something's come up and I want to query the fire department.
Let me just pause you for a moment.
Dora Bubalis.
Thank you very much.
Brattleboro.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I want to query the town manager and the fire department because this has now come up because Daniel, you brought up the issue of the paramedic being able to work. And it's my understanding that separate from the board, there's a doctor that oversees whether or not you should be certified, and they give you criteria that you need to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Have you met those criteria?
Yeah.
You have entirely? Because I thought last night it came up that there were still things that you guys needed to do.
We have some equipment that we have to buy to operate at the paramedic level, but I'm not going to purchase that equipment until I know I have the license to do that job.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense to go buy it and then have them turn around and say, well, you're not going to get the license. As a matter of fact, we have a District 13 meeting tomorrow night. Our application is on the agenda. My hopes is that they'll approve it. As soon as they approve it, I'll order that equipment the next day. But I'm not going to order ahead of time before I know I have the license.
Okay, so as you know, I agree with Kate that there has not been enough process. I, like Bob and Kate, would hope that you guys would not vote on this because I think it's premature, and that you hold off and start looking at other things. Other things being the fact that there are, my experience on the select board and working on boards in this community and just being a member of this community, especially in a small town, it's all about relationships. And Brattleboro has a relationship with the community, and it has nothing to do with whether or not Brattleboro's taxes are okay. It's the hub, it's everything else. But Brattleboro, also being the largest community, has a responsibility to the rest of the communities around. And a lot of times Brattleboro doesn't see that responsibility. Brattleboro sees itself as an island, and Brattleboro isn't an island. It functions in this larger community of people who don't always feel like Brattleboro is looking out for them. And so we need to be careful as a town, as a community, when we start talking about things like this, because it has an effect on others. And those relationships are extremely strong. They're underneath, they bubble up, and those resentments could hinder other things that the town wants to do, the people want to do, and also relationships that, say, a new town manager needs to build. Because if that's been undermined in the first couple of months of being on the working for the town, that could, that could present a problem. I served on a couple of boards that are regional boards, and there's strong feelings about Brattleboro and some of the things that Brattleboro does as a town, that people feel like this is the situation. And I'm feeling like I'm not seeing that from the board members right now. I'm also feeling like there's no, I brought it up yesterday. You guys have had 24 hours to address it. Nothing's been said about what the public participation is going to be on discussing on what's going to be the future of this, and we're a very public community. The budget for this was approved. It was voted on by RTM. When this came up, it should have been, we can look at this in the summer when we start looking at budgets again, but that's already been voted. It's already been approved. Let's move on. That didn't happen. Guidance from the board, leadership, that's where it all is. So anyway, I feel like those relationships are very, 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 very fractured. Now I'm going to come back to process because I was a little disturbed. Just talking about the chair. The chair's job is to be moderator, not do closing arguments to start off the beginning of, I thought the whole tenor of the presentation started out hostile. You can't go anywhere from there if you start out hostile. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Boubalis, for your comments and for your service to the town. I think there's some things to address. I appreciate the comment on my chairship. And as I continue to navigate this, I felt it was necessary to state where I'm at as we began this conversation. I thought a lot about it, but I do really take, I'm very aware of the board rules that we adopted and that the moderation rules, moderation role of the chair is a really essential one. So I take that feedback. I really do. There are other board members that want to address it. I think I would just want to say that, or no,
I think your point about community engagement and community process is really important. And it is something that I know all of us really value. Ian and I very particularly have been pushing hard on encouraging that list of select board goals to very vehemently include engagement in lots of different ways. So when this situation unrolled the way that it did, it was very disappointing. Certainly, I think we were not aware that we would get to a situation where we would have to consider the loss of rescue until we received that letter. And that left us very little time
to act, very little time to engage with the public, and very little time to do the research that was needed to make sure that the financial situation and the care situation were both taken care of for the town. And I think we could have done better. It's true. But for the situation as it is, I think we've done the best that we can to make sure what really matters is that Brattleboro has emergency medical coverage and transport to the hospital, starting when the contract with rescue ends. And I think no matter how we've failed, we at least should be able to succeed at that.
Yes, Liz.
I just wanted to say a little word about Brattleboro and the surrounding towns. You know, whatever those big relationships that were discussed, Brattleboro is often the major participant, the major payer, the major, any number of, you know, daddy paying for the wedding type of relationship in the region. And, you know, we pay the most for Windham Regional, you know, planning and a bevy of other groups. And that's based on when there's a population. And, you know, rescues payment model was also based on population, but also took a turn that, you know, we were endeavoring to understand. But I think more to Dora's point was that that we have an obligation as the town hub to perhaps support the other communities, and that's where I feel very strongly in the opposite direction. You know, years ago, the select board had a huge push to make sure the other towns understood, and that we in Brattleboro understood what it means to be a hub town. And, you know, that's the largest, the central town in the region. And we pay significantly more property tax than the other towns. And that's central to this discussion, because one of the things that we're paying for is a paid career fire department. And so what we would be, you know, if we were to continue to pay the lion's share to rescue, we would continue to be paying for duplicative services for fire and rescue. And, you know, why would we want to do that? You know, these surrounding towns that don't have a paid fire department need the wraparound services from rescue more than we do. It's as simple as that. Why would we continue to have more services that we need when we can contract with Golden Cross and have the ambulance and paramedic and EMT that's specific to our needs? Is, to my way of thinking, common sense. And so whatever way people in other towns look on us and understand us is, you know, not based on the facts at hand. And the facts at hand are that it's efficient municipal government to have a fire EMS system. And that's what we're pondering, and that's what we're setting into place to study. And it provides for patient care, and it provides for efficient municipal government. And
you know, we can be neighborly to our neighbors and we have mutual aid, and that's what I'm in favor of.
Somebody else? Yep. And so with the ending of Liz's comment there, it's now 8:30. So we'll continue public comment. Let's take a 10-minute break, recess, and we'll come back at approximately 8:40. All right, thank you very much. So I believe we left off with a public comment from the room. So we'll move back and look for any hands coming in from Zoom.
We got David Minor.
Mr. Minor?
Good evening, everybody. So the question I have is about the level of due diligence that was done in the process. I think the comment was made recently that the choice came down between Rescue and Golden Cross. And I'm curious, are there other providers in the area that could possibly have been considered?
Thank you for the question. Let's
I did lean on our chief who knows the area and provides an area to ultimately make a suggestion. So
the only other provider that I know of is Deluzio Ambulance, which is a private ambulance out of Keene. And then Greenfield, Mass uses AMR, which is a national chain EMS service through across the country. Those are the two that I could think of right off the bat. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So do you have a follow-up question?
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, so as part of the process, would it all be considered to send out some sort of RFP as part of the analysis to understand what might be out there and options for the town?
I think that I'll speak to that first, and I'll let other board members as well. There's a real time constraint element to this that required us to act quickly to try to find a provider who could provide the type of service that we were looking for, which is a hybrid model, which is kind of different than a traditional third-party ambulance service. And that's because of the 60 days that are necessary to get the licensing or registration. I actually don't know what the term is.
It's the license.
Licensing for this county before the June 30th deadline, where we need to have an EMS ambulance provider come July 1st. So that's an element of it. I think Mr. Manali spoke a little bit to if we were to kind of continue with third-party contractor in the future, then more traditional RFP would be the process.
Correct.
Does anyone else want to speak on that? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Minor. Attorney Seacrest.
Definitely not an attorney tonight. Thank you. I'm a little concerned, and we talk about process and you wonder how this all came here. I haven't come to one of these meetings in a long time because I have a great deal of trust in you people. And I appreciate your service, and I know that you're not hotheads, and I know you're careful and deliberate. And I've always trusted you. I've trusted you to make careful, reasoned decisions where it's important to town. And my concern, I was alarmed when I read about this, like everybody else, learned about it for the first time in the paper. I feel that more public input has gone into the ski jump statute than this decision, which is fairly monumental for the town. I'm a little bit worried from the tenor that I guess not worried. The tenor that I've heard from several board members tonight. Tim, you had said that you thought the board might have been, still willing to work with Rescue until suddenly they got that incendiary letter, which sounds like it was, the most gracious version is that it was, hastily drawn. But there were allegations, they're all incendiary was the word used. And I'm worried that that sort of some of the strong feelings I'm hearing from the board stem really just from the language in a letter, and it would be sad if this multi-decade relationship. I realized there was more background to it that I don't know, and that was alluded to. But really, if there was still hope until that letter came, and then, boy, that letter was the last straw. We're not talking anymore with them. It's just a sad breakdown of communication. And so there was a speaker on Mr. Ozer, I guess, who said he really hoped the board could consider not making that decision. And I'm hearing from you that the decision is pretty much made. Everybody here is trying to do the right thing. I have a great deal of respect for town fire. You guys, you have a great dive team. The fact that the Brooks House is still standing is a testament to your skill and diligence. I'm worried that the confidence that I'm hearing from the board and the fire department tonight may not be warranted as we jump into this on such short notice. I've done just a little bit of looking into this. I think rescue has 18 paramedics and 5, I could be wrong, critical care people who I think maybe are even more experienced. And Brattleboro Fire Department now has maybe 1 paramedic. So to the extent that this decision seems already to have been made, I guess my urging would be for very careful protocols in that 1 year coming up about not the finance, because I know you'll be on top of that, but really an unbiased analysis of patient care. Because I cannot see, even with the best of intentions, how decades of training that rescue has inculcated can be replicated in a short period of time in Brattleboro and letting that go. So what are the assessments planned if this goes forward? What will you be looking at? Is there an outside party looking, other than Golden Cross, who I'm sure does a good job? Is there an outside entity looking at how many response times? How many calls don't get answered and they go to other towns? I don't know. Are there ways of measuring? I don't know if you can tie mortality or how do you measure outcomes so that I think you had said, Dan, you hope the board has the humility, maybe that wasn't the word you used, to be able to come back in here and say it was good, we tried, but we need to look at other options. So how thoroughly has that been thought through and vetted?
Thank you very much. And I'm going to pass that over.
I'm going to let Assistant Chief Keir talk about how our quality of care and how our training is going to take place.
So there's a couple of different factors that fall along into your question. The first one is that we have an agreement with Dr. Storn and Dr. Swosey, who will happen to be the medical directors for the area. They'll have the oversight on the clinical care that we provide to the town of Brattleboro through QA/QI. They'll have that insight into the reports. They'll have that insight into what actually took place, and they'll review that with each provider as those things take place. You talked a little bit about paramedics and critical care paramedics. Critical care paramedics can do a little bit more things than a paramedic. What's important to note is that we're discussing emergency 911 response. We don't have intentions of taking over interfacility transport. Why that's important is because those critical care paramedics, those skills that those paramedics have are used within that critical care or in that interfacility transport when you're taking a patient from Brattleboro Memorial Hospital to Dartmouth or whomever there. We also have policies that have been vetted by those 2 medical directors, as I noted, for credentialing. So when a paramedic goes through the system, he has to do a preceptor program and run through all of his skills or their skills necessary to perform those tasks. Once they've completed those tasks, they have a number of different other things that for continuing ed that they have to meet and check sheets. And all of that has been vetted through Dr. Storn and Dr. Swosey.
Does that quality care or assessment already occur with fire department?
It does. It does. We've entered into an agreement with them to have a stricter level of that quality assurance.
And how do we do right now?
We do very well.
Any other board member want to speak on that? Yeah. Yes, please do.
Mr. Seacrest is kind of speaking to the experience of the staff of both the fire department and Golden Cross. You know, I think it's really worth remembering that Golden Cross is a licensed provider of these services in Vermont and New Hampshire. And so I wonder if Dale, you'd be willing to speak to the experience of your staff.
Again, as I was stating earlier, that I have staff members that have well over 20 years experience. I've got new paramedics, just like any other service does around. So we have a vast majority of folks that have a very wide range of skills, and they all are vetted, and they're all work under the QA/QI type programs with the local hospitals to make sure that we're following all the protocols properly and making sure everything is done appropriately according to what the state and the local hospitals want done.
Chief Howard, there's also a study being conducted that would be ongoing to assess the needs of the department and the understanding of the relationship between fire and rescue going forward. Isn't that correct? I want to talk about that.
Yeah, I've reached out to 2 different third-party vendors that do EMS studies. They've done them all across the country, or for the same exact reason we're here tonight. I'll be coming back to the board here very soon with a recommendation of which company to go with. And that company, when I make that presentation and give it to you, you'll see all that goes right down through a whole checklist of what they're gonna review. It takes a 3 or 4 month process for them to do that. And then when they say the report's done, they'll come to a select board meeting. One of their people will provide that report to you and answer the questions that you have from the results of the report.
But, and the goal of that is to provide like a roadmap or proper protocols going forward.
Right.
Thank you very much. All right.
Nothing online at this point.
Online at this point. All right. So we just look back to the room. If there's anyone else that'd like to make a. Yep. Oh, and I had your name, and now I have lost.
It's okay. It's Maggie. Maggie Lewis.
Maggie Lewis. Great. Thank you very much.
So I just wanted to share my thoughts about this. I think that going with this model that you're talking about is a great idea. And I think the unfortunate situation that's come about between rescue and the town may need a little time to breathe, and you may want to come back and revisit that relationship. And if this is only going to be for a year to model something that may or may not work, when we come back in that year after doing assessment of this model, maybe the town and rescue will have had an opportunity to have that communication that needs to be had. And if the town decides to go back to the original model, then, you know, rescue aid could apply to the RFP that's put out. The other thing I want to say about this model that you're talking about is we've talked about how, you know, what we do now, we do a good job the way we do it. This model affords us the opportunity to do better. When you have a system and there are people, one continuum of care, without that transition, fewer variables, you are going to have better outcomes. It holds true with what you do. It holds true in business. And I think it's worthy of just taking a breath and looking at the opportunity that may be in front of us that has come out of what has been an unfortunate situation that potentially could be mended, and depending on the outcome of how this works. I don't know. I guess it'll be what it'll be, but I think everybody could take a breath and, I don't know, rebuild those relationships and then look to what may be a future best practice.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Lewis. Really appreciate that. Yeah.
I do think it's valuable to have a positive relationship with rescue and the town. I think it's going to be important for our mutual aid systems. and the healthy functioning of all of that as well, in case there are a larger scale emergency that needs response and cooperation. So thank you for your really positive outlook.
Right, I'm just gonna add in on to that. I mean, I don't have any doubt about the professionalism of frontline staff, the fire department, the Golden Cross, the rescue. Like, those people are doing those tasks every day, do them for a reason, and that reason is the well-being of the people that they serve. I trust that completely.
Thank you for that. Anyone else in the room? Oh, yeah, I'm just gonna check to see if any. Anyone else?
I wanted to make sure everybody did get to speak.
Nobody looks like they are, so if you want to back up and speak to us.
So I have one question, because I understand that, for example, Keene contracts for backup and they pay a fee for service for that. Where are we on this? Because a lot of people keep talking about mutual aid, and I really want to make sure that people understand what mutual aid is, because it's being used in the context of, if we have 2 ambulances and we can't respond to a call, then mutual aid responds. That's not really what mutual aid is supposed to be intended to be. It's if there's some big event, people back everybody up. So and ambulance services don't have to be involved in mutual aid. There's contracts for that. So that's going to be an additional cost, and I don't think anybody's looked at that. And I want to make sure that that's been addressed, because either Golden Cross is going to be charging extra for those backups, or rescuers, or somebody else.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, no, I just wanted to go back because I just wanted to make sure this gets on the record, because I brought it up yesterday in the meeting. And that is when I was, and I guess I didn't, Dora Bubalis at Brattleboro, I didn't say it again. It was
I appreciate that.
like, when I was on the select board back, I think it may have been like the first or second year I was on the select board. So that would have been like late 2000s, was when we looked at this issue of the fire department taking over the paramedic duties. At that time, Barb Sondag, the town manager, John Leisner, the finance administrator, director, David Emery, the fire chief, it was brought up and they looked at it, and we looked at the financials, and at that time, it was either going to be a wash or it was going to cost more. I understand that there's been a change in the funding for, the ambulances, but that could change in a year. So, and we're on the verge of a healthcare system collapsing. We don't know what that's going to do. And healthcare costs are going up infinitesimally. So, that all has to be taken into consideration when we're talking about doing a big change. I just want to go back to the process point, just because I feel like there's probably a lot of people who didn't speak tonight, either in the audience or on the Zoom, because they felt like this was a fait accompli. But those sentiments are still out there. And these issues have a tendency to bubble up to the surface again at the most impromptu time. And so I just want to put that out there to the select board, back to the whole process, public participation thing. There's going to have to be an opportunity for those people who are still angry about this, who still have feelings about it, who've not gotten a chance to speak about it, to feel like they've gotten a fair opportunity to voice their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's kind of multiple things to address in your comments and questions. Let's start with the mutual aid one. So I'm going to pass that over to.
I think you might misunderstand. To my knowledge, Deluzio does not Keene does not pay Deluzio an extra contracted fee for them to come in to cover calls when they can't cover them all. They just collect the revenue from that call. But I can check into it further and be 100%, but I'm about 99% sure that's the case.
Can I just, because this is the moment. Yes. I just want to remind everybody that there's another layer between two ambulances possibly both being occupied and mutual aid. There is further trucks.
We'll have two engines that can
Correct.
do first response.
Yes.
And the other thing to remember is our responsibility is Brattleboro. Our longest transport time from the top of Sunset Lake Road to the top of Ames Hill is going to be 15 minutes. The majority of our response times are going to be 3 to 5 minutes. I mean, our transport time is going to be 3 to 5 minutes to BMH.
Right, and it was pointed out at yesterday's meeting that Rescue Inc. has 3 ambulances embedded right there, Canal Street, right? But those ambulances go to other towns.
As well as they do interfacility transports as well. So.
Right. So it's not always the case that Rescue has any ambulances in that nice facility they have right at Canal Street, and that is dealt with, correct?
Okay.
I just want to, there is this concern about the 2 ambulances, but it's very important to understand that these are dedicated Brattleboro only transport ambulances.
And I just follow up for my own understanding to ensure I get this. So completely understandable with our current contract with Rescue, there are times when, because they're providing their services to the other municipalities that they serve, that there are no ambulances, rescue ambulances in Brattleboro. So if there is an emergency that requires an ambulance currently in our contract with Rescue, what does the process look like?
If they can't provide an ambulance,
I guess if there isn't one, if there isn't one.
if they're all tied up, they would call mutual aid, or which could be either Keene or most likely Keene or Deluzio, or we could wait if their Townsend quarters is available and can come down. You figure the travel time from West Townsend and from Keene, it's pretty similar travel time.
Okay.
Who makes that decision? Like,
On who call?
how is that all figured out? Is it dispatch or?
In Brattleboro, the fire department makes the decision, who's gonna, when it's a priority 1 call and we're making that decision. It's our responsibility of the town to make that decision.
Okay, and then there was the second part to your question was about it was talking about sort of the last time that this was assessed when you were on board versus now, and kind of speaking to that. So I want to just have town manager now speak to that for a minute, because we've had some discussion that's worth speaking to it again.
Yeah, I think it's, it's something that circumstances change over years, right? Like we talked about yesterday a little bit, the reimbursements rates have changed, costs have changed. And that's why we looked at other towns and we looked at fire EMS in other municipalities to say, okay, are they losing money? Are they not doing well? Are they failing? And in every single case, that's not happening, right? So we're seeing that they are doing well and they are functioning in an effective way. Looking at the finances in general, this whole thing came about, right? And I think I mentioned this yesterday, and not all of it came about by this way, because I know that when we had our conversation when I first started here, you had mentioned it. So that triggered me to be able to look at this issue. I had been in a municipality in much larger than here, about 10 times the size, that has a similar, like one of the issues I was brought up today, that has a similar poverty rate. Actually higher poverty rate than Brattleboro, but also has a high immigration population, undocumented immigrant population. So their uncollected rate was about 40%, which is incredibly high, right, for any other municipality. And so when we looked at that issue, and in this municipality, the city, in the part of the budget, I put the budget together in that municipality, we allocated about $65,000 to that municipality, to that EMS, which is a nonprofit. All EMS, they weren't fire EMS, it was just EMS services. We provided about $65,000 to cover their expenses because, and even then it was a struggle with our council because they're saying, why are they not, cost neutral, right? And but because of the high unreimbursed rate, because of the high uncollected rate, we had to put in that 65. So when I saw, obviously what was happening here, for me, it was something that I needed to look into. And I think that was what just triggered this, is that, okay, here's this large amount that's happening to a municipality that has a lower uncollected rate, lower calls for service, and a lower population. And yet they are paying 4.5 times longer. So I had to understand, why is that happening? And so that's a lot of the questions that started in this we had discussed before, is why? And that's all I was looking for. And I think that's what we've been asking for, and we've continued to. But I don't think we never got to that point, which is your discussion, right? Is this financially viable? Because we haven't got there yet, right? The select board hasn't made a decision if that's financially viable yet, because that's why we're going to have a third party to do this analysis. Our internal analysis says yes, it is. But again, I think you're absolutely right. It's the public vetting, it's defining that third party to be able to say, let's look at all the books. We'll have the bills, right? Because part of the relationship here, we made very clear in our contract is that we'll be able to get those monthly billables. So we'll know what the monthly are coming in. What is the uncollected rate here? What is Medicaid, Medicare? We were told by the hospitals about 60% in this municipality, right? Is what the Medicaid, Medicare reimbursement is right now. So those are all things that are going to factor as we look at this. So yes, I agree. You're absolutely right. In the past that may have been an issue, but I don't think that decision has been made yet by the select board, and that's something that we're all going to consider. So you're absolutely right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just another follow-up on your comments about public participation, which I want to keep talking about. So it sounds like there will be future opportunities to participate in the conversation when we award the contract for the third party to do the feasibility study, when we get the report from that third party of their study. We'll have an opportunity in the fall as well, when the fire department presents a budget for next fiscal year. The public will have an opportunity to weigh in on town meeting day, when they can re-elect or not this lovely group of people. And then at representative town meeting, folks will have, again, a chance to weigh in on the proposed budget and the opportunity to discuss certainly any changes that might be made within the fire department.
Please.
Plus 2 more public meetings, like
And plus 2 more public meetings. Yes, and on top of that, yeah, if I have them in my brain, Saturday.
This Saturday.
This Saturday at 1 o'clock at Brattleboro Central Fire Station, and this Tuesday, the 26th at 6 o'clock at Brooks Memorial Library.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And that's just some. This is going to be an issue that we're going to be talking about all year, and I hope that it's going to be before the board quite a bit as we move forward in determining its viability. Because our internal numbers say it is viable, but we got to make sure that that's really true. So that's got to be in front of the board, and that happens in public, and we'll have plenty of discussions about it.
And every single select board meeting has an item, say it's public participation, about things that are not on the agenda. So if it's not on the agenda and you want to speak to it, and you want to speak to it on the record in front of this group of people, you just show up and you speak your mind. We've received a great deal of communication from the public, and it's important, and it factors into decisions that we make. And it's also like a piece of it, right? Each one of us who at one point in our lives, took the step to run for office, and then voters took the step to elect us, weighs all of this stuff very seriously. And I think some of this stuff comes down to trust, and it's not maybe acceptable to some people to just hear trust us. But I have worked on this board now for 4 years. And we're kind of lucky in a way to have the same board this year that we had last year. I know how these people work. I know how a lot of the people in this room work, and I have complete faith that they approach this work with great seriousness. And I know that I attempted to do that as well. So.
Thank you. Yes, please. Sorry. I'm gonna put you back down because we gotta Zoom, and I want to hold to the process.
All right, so the next up is Gary Stroud.
Oh, is there? I'm gonna say if there's a Zoom hand up, that's someone who hasn't spoken yet.
Yep, that's David Petrie.
Excellent.
Okay.
Sorry, Gary, we're gonna put you at the bottom until we have other people speak first.
Am I on?
Yes.
You know, I emailed all of you guys today, and as I was on social media posting more often than I've posted in a long time, including even about the birth of my first grandchild this weekend.
Congratulations.
No, thank you. I was concerned. I was concerned about the speed that this was happening. And I just want to note that the April 11th press release that you guys put out did say that the plan was to move to a combined fire EMS, and that the contract was for Golden Cross to fill in for the year while the pieces were being put in place. And what I'm hearing tonight is a shift, it seems, and maybe I didn't get a chance to go to the Golden Cross meeting last night, so maybe it was in there, that actually the next year is going to be used to assess the feasibility. And, you know, is that a shift? Was the press release not 100% clear? So that's a question, and then we can come back.
Okay, I was just thinking about your question. Yeah, I'll take that. So yeah, it's to me, it's not a shift. I think it's yes to the press release wasn't clear enough, and that we were acting quickly to make sure that we were informing the public so that we could make sure that we secured a contract so that we can fulfill the responsibility that the board has to have EMS ambulance services after June 30th. And we were trying to make sure that we were keeping the public informed because we absolutely felt as a board that this was moving quickly. And I think there's no way that we could move forward with fire EMS without doing a viability study to determine whether it actually will work in town or not. Now, does that mean that we as individual select board members don't want that move? No, not at all. I really believe it is the right move for Brattleboro. But I'm not going to let that desire and want blind me to the numbers and the due diligence that's required as an elected official to make sure that we're making fiscally and service-based decision-making on how we provide EMS ambulance services in Brattleboro.
Thank you. And you know, it's shifted my confidence, honestly. And I just wanted to note that. You know, I also want to, Yoshi emailed me this afternoon and you know, to talk about some of my concerns, and I appreciated that. I mean, the fact is the transparency, the professionalism that I'm seeing here has been incredibly helpful in reviewing the process, you know, and I appreciate in a way the pickle that you've been put in with this sort of getting dropped. And you know, I'm disappointed that I haven't really seen any communication at all from the rescue end, you know, from the board or rescue leadership to try to address the letter that came out that was, yes, as I have noted, had a level of anger that was surprising. And you know, and I wasn't sure where, honestly, the root of that was. And it seems that there are, this has been bubbling. And it does seem that the, you know, relationship between rescue leadership and the town is fractured to the point where it's not going to be an easy fix. And yes, there is an urgency, and I appreciate that. So I had written to all of you to ask you to consider other options, and just so that I'm not seen as one of those people who's not chiming in because I feel that it was a done deal before the room was open to people. That isn't how I feel. And not only that, I've shifted gears. I mean, obviously there are frontline staff at Rescue who are unfortunately going to be impacted by this change. And nobody wants to see that happen. But also I do know that, and I have full confidence in Brattleboro Fire Department. And again, this plan sounds good, especially since my issue's always been the fiscal responsibility and the feasibility of it, and that this year is going to be taken to assess that. And I would also agree that, you know, there's been a lot of opportunity for Rescue to be able to provide numbers and information, and they've refused. So the thought that Rescue would work with you guys in the next year to be able to really give an assessment is questionable with the way that things have gone so far. You know, I appreciate hearing from Golden Cross and, you know, taking out the emotional issues of the fact that some of our community members are likely going to experience some job loss tied to this. You know, that is a sad thing, and it's not any of their fault, you know, but it's also not the fault of this select board, and it's not the fault of the town manager. And you know, I just wanted to address that. So anyways, it's been first select board meeting, just like Attorney Seacrest said, that I've sat through in a long time. And it's been refreshing. And I also want to go on the record also that it's, you know what, the town charter is the town charter. And I'm not one of those ones that, you know, that feels that, you know, you guys have a responsibility to the town of Brattleboro. So, and I think that you're doing a great job. And thank you for the detailed discussion, your patience, and your professionalism on this matter.
Thank you very much. Oop.
My name is Zachary Browns, and I just want to introduce myself a little bit on the record. I am a advanced EMT and have served in this community for some time. I am from Burlington, Vermont. I'm currently undergoing undergraduate education. I serve at the University of Vermont Medical Center in District 3. And I also have been the former deputy EMS chief for the Vernon, Vermont Fire Department. And I would like to be very transparent with the fact that I am a member of Rescue Inc., former EMS lieutenant for Rescue Inc., but I do not represent Rescue Inc. tonight. I would also like to make myself clear that I have spent the last 8 years of my time in EMS building friendships with the people of the Brattleboro Fire Department. I really do not want to sever any friendships or relationships with any of you people because I respect every one of you. That being said, I on behalf of emergency medical services and the patients in this community, I would like to ask some difficult questions that maybe would help the select board make an educated decision about the contract with Golden Cross Ambulance tonight. I also would not like to speak directly to the future plans for the fire department in a joint fire EMS model 1 year from now, as I do not see that this is the evening to discuss it. That being said, my first question is in regard to call volume. And I direct this question to the fire chiefs. And I would like to just revisit the number of calls that the Brattleboro Fire Department has on the record responded to for the last year. Is that a number that you can just refresh the public on?
Total calls, Zach?
Yeah, just the total medical calls.
Total medical calls we want is 1,367. That doesn't include motor vehicle accidents. Those are considered separately. So if you consider in the motor vehicle accidents, we're probably around 1,450.
Okay. And would it be possible for the fire department to quantify the amount of medical calls within the town of Brattleboro that the fire department does not currently respond to?
Yep. So based on the numbers provided by Rescue Inc. that we received, 30% of the call volume that Rescue Inc. responds to is in the town of Brattleboro. So that's the clearest number that we have. That number represents 1,710 calls, I believe.
Thank you. My next comment is in regards to, and excuse me for bouncing around. I am not a very good public speaker, but I do have a lot of questions. So my next comment is in regard to the governance of the select board. I have never served in an elected position at the town government level or any real level, to be honest. But it would appear that sitting in the background of this conversation, that the majority of the public that has spoken tonight has had problems with the process and the due diligence that has been taken. I sincerely hope that that moving forward with any matters in regards to emergency services specifically, that these processes be extremely vetted and include the public on a regular basis, because it does not promote confidence to somebody that is calling 911 in this community for these events to transpire the way they did. It's my professional opinion that there is a level of experience that a private ambulance provider has that a fire department does not have necessarily. And again, I fully support every medical provider at BFD. I always have. I love working with them. They are great people. There is nothing wrong with the medical care that comes out of Brattleboro Fire Department. There is nothing wrong. Okay, but there are some things that can't be compared when you have a service that is doing this all the time, everywhere around you, and then you look to give this responsibility solely to a fire department that doesn't necessarily have any transport experience. So that segues into my next question. It is very confusing to me that we are treating this one-year contract with Golden Cross Ambulance as both an apprenticeship and both an avenue to investigate whether or not a fire EMS-based model is appropriate for the town. That being said, based on the information that I have reviewed, it would appear that if Golden Cross is only providing, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be wrong, but if Golden Cross is only providing 2 medical providers on a daily basis, then that means that in order to operate 2 ambulances in the town of Brattleboro, you will be operating a fire EMS-based model as soon as July 1st happens. And I would like to know if anybody in this room has a comment on that. It's very difficult to justify spending a year vetting a procedure that you might move towards, while during the vetting process, the town will be utilizing that process.
So I can begin the response, and I maybe other people will chime in, but it is not the same thing, because we're not buying the equipment like the ambulances. We're not doing the reimbursement. We're not investing. We still are third partying out a major portion of this, which is the actual transport and the paramedic and the AEMT. So it's a hybrid. It really is. It's not municipal fire EMS yet. It's a hybrid model, and that's kind of what I was speaking to with why it's important for this year for us to have this hybrid model, because Rescue wouldn't provide us with the documentation we needed to figure out what this really looked like. And I believe that our partners with Golden Cross will help us to determine that, which is why I think it's important that we enter into this contract to help us on top of all of the other investigation we're going to do to determine whether fire EMS is viable. So my answer to the question is no, I don't believe we are currently a fire EMS as of July 1st. Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to kind of just get down to like very specific examples. So in the current system, somebody calls 911, they need an ambulance. What happens next?
They call 911, it goes to our dispatch, they tone out BFD and rescue, and we respond.
Fire department and rescue both go to the same place.
Right.
And whoever gets there first
Initiates.
working on the
Right.
person. right? And so sometimes that's fire, and then what happens after that?
Wow, once the ambulance arrives and we get the point.
Excuse my ignorance.
No, not at all. Once we arrive and we're at a point where we can turn over patient care to rescue, we'll advise them what we found and what we've done, and care will be turned over to them.
Okay. And so in the model that we're moving to now with a different provider, someone will call 911, they'll need an ambulance, and a Golden Cross ambulance will be dispatched from Brattleboro Central Fire Station to a location in Brattleboro, driven by BFD.
One BFD provider will be on the ambulance with a Golden Cross provider.
Okay. And staffed by Golden Cross paramedic or AEMT, depending on available. With like an additional BFD person, or is it just two people on a?
It'll initially be two, depending on if it comes in as a cardiac arrest, as it currently does. We send our what we call our medical / company. They go to the medical, as well as the engine company gets in and goes to there, because when you're doing a cardiac arrest, as Zach knows, it takes many people to perform that duty. And we'll still do that same model with going with Golden Cross. If it comes in as a cardiac arrest, somebody's not breathing, the engine will follow them.
And so the experience of the people on both of those ambulances in both of those situations is pretty comparable.
Yep.
Right there, EMTs, AEMTs, paramedics. So, I don't see a whole lot of difference other than there's going to be some different badging on the ambulance, and the ambulance will be guaranteed to come from the center of Brattleboro to service the people of Brattleboro.
And there'll be continuing care, and there will be a hand.
Anyone else like to speak to that question? Okay. I just want to make sure that you've got lots of questions, and we haven't had any time limit at all for anybody, and I'm not going to impose that one on you. But I want to make sure that we can respond to the questions you have.
Of course.
Yeah. So go ahead.
And just in response to Daniel's comment about comparability between certifications, of course, every advanced EMT and every paramedic and every EMT operates under the same scope of practice in the state of Vermont. Comparable, 100%. But there is a difference between a provider that has spent their entire career in an ambulance versus a provider that has a certification in order to apply for a fire permit.
Right, and I guess what I was trying to
the
get at.
quality of patient care could, and I'm not saying it will, I'm saying it could have an impact based on that.
Okay, so I'm going to pause you there and let Daniel respond to that, and I'll also let Fire respond to that.
So maybe I didn't fully make it clear, but what I was trying to understand is the level of care that you're talking about, that ambulance experience won't necessarily come from a BFD person, but it will come from a Golden Cross person.
If one of the two people are available.
And I just want to make clear that we do ride in on the ambulance. Matter of fact, it's quite frequently that we either drive the ambulance into the BMH or we ride in the back of the ambulance and work on the patient with them. So this isn't something that our staff, do they do it every day? No. But are we relied on by rescue to get in the back of the ambulance and perform care? Yes. Are we relied on to drive the ambulance because they don't have somebody to drive it? Yes. So I'll leave it there.
Just one question. This is not, I think you may not be able to answer this question. It just came up, and then literally this is not, I'm not trying to interrogate you in any way. I was just wondering, what is the employee turnover at Rescue? Do you have an understanding of that? Again, this is not, I don't want to make, this is not anything about that. I just was sort of curious about that, because as a, obviously as a BFD, it does matter when it comes to, you're talking about the patient care and experience, being in the community is such an important part. If there is 20 years people, which I imagine there are, I think it's important, for, especially, I know that you don't represent Rescue.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
I'll just lead by saying that my comment is not rescuing response to this. And I haven't been in rescuing station in a fair amount of time, and I haven't been full-time in the last 8 months. But in regards to staff turnover, I think that it's probably up to par with every EMS service that is not depending on, a municipal staff. EMS in this nation is crumbling, along with healthcare, but EMS has been crumbling for a very long time. And there are a lot of different things that factor into that crumbling. I think that there's probably a fair amount of turnover. There probably is. But when it comes to your full-time paramedic staff, I can tell you that there are several people that are very, very vetted to this community, and have spent their lives, doing so. So in response to that question, that's.
Okay, so,
Just,
oh, yes.
wanted to clarify something. You keep saying that there will be 2 people provided by Golden Cross. And I just wanted to clarify that because it's not exactly what the contract says.
We will have one preferred paramedic 24/7. And to cover our heavy call volume from 8 AM to 8 PM, there'll be a second provider that works from 8 AM to 8 PM.
There'll be multiple people.
So 2
Right.
people.
We'll be the same 2 people all the way. Yes. Mr. Rounds, please.
So I'm sorry, I feel like I asked them the question and I forgot which one it was, so I'll circle back to it. I'll come back. I also just, on a personal level, this is not my professional opinion, but this is a personal thing. Elizabeth, your comment about ripping the Band-Aid off in regards to Rescue Inc., I am fairly certain that you have touched every single individual that works at Rescue Inc. when you said that, because they come to work every day to serve your community. Every single one of them. And the efforts on leadership's behalf at Rescue, that should not impact the reputation that Rescue Inc. has on this community and continues to hold regardless of any ambulance contract. So my personal opinion is that we should continue to promote some type of a working relationship with a service that really does some attractive things for a town. On a medical level, on a pediatric level, if you stop considering the leadership problems between the 2 agencies, the 2 entities, whatever you want to call them, there's a level of relationship that I think that all 3 of these parties need to maintain throughout this.
Okay, so let me just respond. I was talking about the leadership and talking about the history of the bad relationship, and that I think it's imperative that we make this change. But I was not in any way besmirching the reputation of the rank and file rescue personnel. I know many of them personally. I know they're very dedicated and they're very capable, but their leadership did not serve them and did not serve Brattleboro in the letter and the tenor of the letter and the lack of willingness to negotiate. That's on their leadership. And so from that perspective, it seemed to me that this action needed to take place. And it takes a lot of courage on the part of Brattleboro, the fire department and the town manager and the select board to make this decision, because obviously it's controversial, but I believe it needed to be made because the leadership at Rescue was not serving the community by the way that they were such poor negotiators.
Fair enough. I have no additional comment.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
And I just want to ask, did I understand, did you come down here from Burlington for this meeting?
Yes.
My gosh, well, thank you very much for taking all the time. I'm from your where you are now, so I know that ride very well. And,
It is a horrible ride.
it's a horrible ride. It's not too many turns.
No, definitely.
So thank you, Mr. Round, so much for your questions and for being here tonight.
Thank
you. Okay, so I don't see any more questions from Zoom, and I'm looking. Oh, his hand is down now, so maybe he's chosen not to, but I can.
It's up.
Thank you very much.
We'd like to hear from.
As they say, be careful what you wish for. I guess the question, was getting into the aspect. I'm always a numbers guy. I've done accounting. I like graphs and things like that. And I guess what you were saying, that type of transparency in numbers is very important these days. As we know, the cost of everything is going up, gas, labor, parts and everything to have the answer to why the cost is important is in everything we do today, even when we go shopping. And in some sense, I like to compare that with what you were saying, the ambulance ride is pretty much like a Medicaid ride. As long as it's functioning, it's reliable, and it's safe. These are the things that factor in. And I'm just thinking with the new ambulances, are they up to speed, or will you have to come back again to get new ones? Or is this going to be an ongoing labor cost? So looking at those numbers, I maybe might want to look at that again. I don't think it's not just the fact of service. I think it's more finance, as you've spoken about. You know, ends have to justify the cause and effect, checks and balances. So I think that's something, if brought back to the table, sat down, negotiated, or with mediator, perhaps that can give a little bit of leeway to perhaps shift the change of tides and put that bit back into the horse's mouth, as they say, so that this will benefit the people of Brattleboro, and people not coming with just, you know, personal issues that they have dealt with personally. But as I say, it's not about me, it's what's best for the people. And these things come into play. And I think finance is a very important thing. And I like to see pies and charts. And that way, when we are going forward, we'll know where the cost is going and where it's going to be spent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
It's not really fully formed, and that's always dangerous. I just want to make a comment because there's been a lot of discussion about, you know, Yoshi's projections and talking about how this looks pretty good on the financial side, but it's entirely, in my view, not the point. The point, no one would say, you know, the library is not making us enough money, so the library should cut back. I mean, the library is a valuable and important service in our town, okay? This is saving lives. This is a service we should provide. The new model, hopefully, if successful, will provide that service with more transparency, more, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm starting to lose it. Accountability, thank you. And I think that's very important. The point is not to get a cash cow going for Brattleboro, okay? I mean, I'd be happy if we break even if it costs us just as much as it cost us with rescuing line item right there. I don't think it will, let me be clear about that. But if it does, we're still doing a good thing for this town. And I want to make that clear, because it's not about making money from helping people survive.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. All right. Well, I don't see any more hands on Zoom, and yep.
Just one more. I'm going to beat the drum again, because I'm not feeling confident in the responses that any of the 5 of the select board members have given about public participation. I don't think you really understand what it really is. So, and that's fine. You can, you know, do things the way you want to do, but I would suggest set up a committee, do a survey, and build into the contract with whoever you hire that they need to hire somebody who is a good mediator to actually have real public participation. You guys don't have to think about it, because you don't seem, it's not your game. I'm seeing a lot of technocrats, and that's okay. But it's, you know, there's a lot of things associated. I also would suggest a training, but for the 5 of you, but that's a whole nother issue. But there are things that can be done that are in a playbook for how to do it right. And you don't have to invent the wheel. It's there. You just have to know that it's something that maybe it's not a strength of your guys, and go and find it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bublis, for your comments. And I'm happy to receive the criticism for myself, but I do feel a need to just defend my fellow board members that we're not a bunch of technocrats. These people care very deeply about this town, about the process, about public participation. You heard what we've been saying tonight is that this is a really difficult element of this, is that the public participation has not been sufficient. And we hear that. And we are dedicated to continuing to provide that we are doing this work in the public in the future. And we have done it in the past. And I won't speak more to it because you're entirely entitled to your opinion. But I can take the criticism for me, but I can't stand by when I hear criticism of my fellow board members.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a public participation process, a community engagement process that is about feasibility of Brattleboro Fire EMS service is entirely appropriate. What is not appropriate for both parties is a public participation process about contract negotiations, because parties are harmed that way, potentially. And the thing that you read when we go into executive session is about protecting both parties. So if somebody that we're entering into a contract negotiation with wants to have a public process about that, and the town wants to have a public process about that, and the town attorney advises that is wise, then maybe that's all well and good. But that is not how contracts are negotiated typically. And as somebody who sat on the select board, I'm sure you know that. So I just want to put that in the room, because whilst it might not sound lovely, it's the truth.
I was going to say that Bob hasn't been able to speak all night.
He's had nothing to speak to.
If I was
You're doing a great job, you know?
No. I just thought that we could rely on you to perhaps remind everyone who signs contracts under Vermont law and what the remedy is for those people in the public who are not happy with a contract that they've been signed.
So your duty with regard to ambulance services, as was pointed out early on, is in your charter, and it is your duty and responsibility and power of the select board to provide those services and to do the contracting. So that rests with the select board. That the public as a whole, or representative town meeting, or the registered voters in the town, they don't actually sign contracts. And so if the public is not happy with what you as a select board has done in your duties, whether it's this contract or other contracts or other duties that you have as the select board, then as I think it's been pointed out, the remedy is next year, if you're running for re-election, the public doesn't need to vote for you. And that's a risk that obviously you take when you make your decisions up there. So I hope that answers your question on that.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to remind everybody that the decision tonight is about a contract, which the case for it being a very pressing need to sign a contract has been made.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, so I don't see any other public comments in the public, and I don't see any hands in the Zoom. So I think at this point, I entertain if there's any closing remarks from board members. If there's anyone who has anything to say. In that case, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jess.
I move that we authorize the town manager to execute a one-year contract with Golden Cross Ambulance Service of Claremont, New Hampshire, in the amount of $75,000.
Thank you, Jess. Jess has made a motion to authorize the town manager to execute a one-year contract with Golden Cross Ambulance Service of Claremont, New Hampshire, in the amount of $75,000. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the fire department, to residents of Bull Cross for your time. Okay, so the next item for the board is new business agenda item E. All right, we'll give it just a second.
Obviously, the super elevated dollar permission. No.
So, new business agenda item E is the Windham Regional Commission appointment. For those of you who are sticking with us, the board at 5:15 heard interviews from 3 candidates for the Windham Regional Commission. We also received their applications, which were reviewed previously for this meeting. And so now we commence in the very convoluted way that we elect people to boards here on the board. So basically, do I need to remind the board how we do this?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, the way we go is we nominate the board. The board nominates candidates, and we then go through and vote. And if you nominate more than one candidate, then we'll vote on each candidate. And if there's a tie, then we remove any candidates who didn't make it, and then we vote again, and we continue to down that. And so I basically say, I open the board to make nominations for the candidates. I then ensure that we've had all the nominations, then we close that, and then we have the vote, and we carry through with all the names. And eventually, we find ourselves with one name and one appointee. So I open it up to nominations. Liz had her hand up first.
I nominate Ralph Mima. I was very impressed with his credentials and his willingness to serve and what he had to say about the position.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Any other nominations?
I nominate Gary Stroud.
Gary Stroud, a well-known member of the community who serves on many committees. The man has infinite time, which is remarkable.
Yes.
God bless him.
Infinite.
And so, do I take any other nominations?
Right here.
Yes.
I nominate Kevin O'Brien, who has an incredible forward-thinking attitude towards climate change and the climate crisis we're facing.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the nomination of Kevin O'Brien. So we have 3 nominations, and we will now.
Nominations closed.
Oh yeah, there are no more. So I close the nominations. And so I think I'm doing this correctly. So all those in favor of Ralph Mima, Ralph Mima, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it'd be 4 votes.
Okay.
Now, all those in favor of Gary Stroud, please indicate with an aye.
Aye.
That'd be 1 vote. And then all those in favor.
You can vote twice.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can vote as many times as you'd like. And the final is for Kevin O'Brien. Please indicate with an aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it looks clearly that Mr. Ralph Mima has, I had it that time. And I apologize, Ralph, if you're watching this again. It has been a long meeting, and I'm trying to get it right every time. Congratulations, and we'll make sure that the town staff send that information to all 3 candidates. And thank you to all 3 candidates for their applications. It's a really important commission, and we really appreciate the interest.
And invite the non-winning candidates to apply for other positions.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Yes, there may be other positions that Gary Stroud would like to.
Absolutely, and for Kevin as well.
We're picking on you.
Yeah. And then we then move on to new business agenda item F, which is committee appointments.
I'd love to.
Thank you.
Make a motion. This is for appointments to the Arts Committee, Town Arts Committee, newly re-energized.
Yep.
Would help with in public art. And I would like to nominate the following 3 people. Oh, wait, I'm not nominating, I'm just straight up appointing because it's uncontested.
I think you nominated
No,
Slate.
you're gonna nominate the slate and we'll vote on the slate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'd like to nominate Kirsten Martzi, Colleen Savage, and Richard Davis to the Arts Committee.
Thank you. Daniel has made nominations. Do we vote or? Yeah, we vote. Okay, so all those in favor of the slate of the 3 applicants for the Arts Committee, Kirsten Martzi, Colleen Savage, and Richard Davis. Aye?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
That's done. So this potential motion that says to appoint is.
We did.
I think we did it correctly, but I'll defer to town staff to ensure that with that.
Did we do it okay?
Oh, okay. Well,
I
believe so.
Nominate. We just nominated.
Okay, no, for correct process, let's do it correctly.
Just no point.
And I apologize, it's my fault.
I would like to make a motion.
Thank you.
I would like to move that we appoint Kristen Martzi, Colleen Savage, and Richard Davis to the Town Arts Committee.
Jess has made a motion to appoint Kirsten Martzi, Colleen Savage, and Richard Davis to the Arts Committee. All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing from the Arts Committee. I believe if there is nothing further, I can entertain one more motion for the evening. Liz.
I move to adjourn.
Liz has moved to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, BCTV. Thank you, Patrick, for all of your work and energy and manning the Zoom. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you to the Zoom attendees who are still here.
Yeah. Look at those hangers on.